Monday that he believed he had finally achieved the sort of work-life balance for which he has long strived.
Ever since I got fired, it just seems like my whole entire routine is just clicking. I go for jogs in the afternoon, spend nights with my wife and kid. I'm even cooking more. Everything just feels right.
Morrison, who since his termination has found time to pick up reading again, eat a healthy diet, and sleep more than 5 hours a night, noted that his unemployment has allowed him to find a level of harmony in his personal life that he never before thought possible.
For a while there, I thought that I was going to spend the rest of my life constantly worrying about getting to the office on time and pleasing my boss. Outside of the late payments on the house, the mounting credit card debt, the rapidly depleting savings, my life is essentially stress-free. I honestly couldn't be happier.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. As always, you can take control of the airwaves, talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 if you would like to do that. Again, that number is 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight on this Monday, it's Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And coming up, stories about a study that has proved that large language models, that's what most people refer to as AI. Now, these are not obviously artificial intelligence because they don't actually reason and process and think critically and do the things that one associates with artificial intelligence. They are basically just very well programmed scripts that are taking input from around the world and repackaging it for the most part to generate that same content but in a new form. Now, this is like when you go to Google now and you look something up. It basically just scans Reddit and Yahoo Answers and Wikipedia or whatever, and then generates an answer for you instead of requiring you to go to those actual websites. But the artificial intelligence behind it isn't actually doing any thinking. It's not doing any processing. It's just regurgitating back information that it has picked up. And a study recently has proved that, which is not a surprise to people who follow artificial intelligence because we've been dealing with these large language models for several years now. And when it first started going around a few years ago, I had such high hopes that we were on to something big, especially with LaMDA, the Google artificial intelligence that the guy researching it or programming it or whatever was convinced was actually sentient. And it seemed, based on the dialogues that we read that he engaged with LaMDA, it seemed that he might be correct and that it was sentient. But nothing that I've encountered of any of these large language models, any of these artificial intelligences like ChatGPT or the Google one, has been even remotely impressive to me. I don't see what the big deal is. And
that's interesting because you're even more critical than I am. I would say it's impressive advancement, but not in AI. So
I've used these things here and there, and maybe the paid models are better than the free models, but I hear all these stories about asking ChatGPT to program something or to solve some problem they're having, and in the few times that I've attempted to do that, I get just absolute nonsense back from ChatGPT.
I've had the same kind of experience where like it can regurgitate stuff that's on the internet, and often it gets it wrong, and
as often as the internet gets it wrong,
right? And then like it can't actually ever give me something that isn't already out there somewhere, right? So It's like, what good does this do me? A search is more useful to me where I can see the original results or the original answers and then judge from there. But now you're adding this artificial this what they're calling AI or large language models, and it's like it's regurgitating it, but who knows, it will also mess it up in addition to wherever it's sourcing it from.
Right, because it is attempting to, I don't want to say read that information because read isn't the right word, but it's attempting to take that information and process it and like summarize it for you in a way that is easily presentable and easily understood, it often fails at that very task as well.
Right.
So it's often better to go directly to the sources instead of this word salad that has looked at those sources and told you what it thinks they're saying, when usually the source itself is saying something incorrect. And then you have the large language model that is regurgitating that, chopping it up into little pieces and trying to serve it to you. And it's compounding nonsense with more nonsense, effectively.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting too, in that I am so frustrated by how much bad information there is out there from people just trying to be helpful, and then it's like, oh yeah, it's no wonder why it's getting so much wrong. It's just because the internet is chock full of bad answers or bad responses.
It is.
And some of the information might have been good like a decade ago. And then it just it doesn't know the difference between something that maybe you need more recent information on or older information. It's like what was true, a decade ago to do X isn't true today because, the versions of operating systems have changed, or versions of software have changed, or, whatever it is, or, maybe it's some car thing, it's like, yeah, just because cars had. And then we're going back to, if you take cars as an example, it might assume that there's a gas engine in it or something. And it's like, well, originally there were electric engines, but now there's gas engines. Well, but we're now back to electric. And so it's like, yeah, it doesn't have a good answer.
I had a weird audio issue at my studio when I was recording music. Just on one particular input, it would sort of double the input so that I could hear it twice, one with a very, very slight delay to it. And I couldn't figure out why it was doing it. I had a friend recommend, ask ChatGPT. So I spent about 20 minutes trying to just explain the setup to ChatGPT, because it's a complicated setup and you need to know all of these specifics in order to make it happen. It went absolutely nowhere. After about 20 minutes of explaining the setup, the suggestions that it was giving me were just completely useless. One of them was restart my computer and other nonsense like that. I'm like, no, dude, that's not the issue here. That can't possibly be the issue here. I never did actually determine what the issue was. I basically just disconnected every cable and reconnected them. And I think I probably did it in a slightly different order that fixed that issue. Regardless, ChatGPT was useless. I have found no utility to it whatsoever other than the art generation. I found AI art to be a good solution to a lot of problems that I've run into in the past. Because I don't write as much as I used to, but when I write an article, I like to include related images. In the past, I would just Google search for a related image. I would have something in my head and I would find that image and I would put it up there. And because I don't believe in intellectual property, I would just happily take someone else's artwork and not care about it. Now, though, I can just ask AI to generate me whatever it is that I'm looking for, and I don't have to take someone else's artwork or someone else's logo or whatever. And it doesn't bother me at all to take someone else's art. Look, sorry, that's the nature of publishing. Once you put something out there in the public forum, people can copy it and people can use it without your permission. That's really what it means to publicize something. You're giving up your rights to control it.
I jump through hoops to avoid paying for content, not because it's a financial issue, but it's like a principle issue. It's a moral issue. And I don't have a problem contributing financially to projects that I'm working on, stuff that I like. But if you're going to force me to pay for it, I have an issue with that, because it also then means, I'm forced to identify myself to you. There's privacy implications to that. I always remember back in the day, renting VHS tapes even. I'm like, I don't want to give you my information so I can rent it, because they back in the day, they would take your information, they record what what movie you rented, of course, right? And now there's
for the younger people out there, what he's referring to is before Netflix, where you go to stream movies now, there were rental services. In fact, Netflix began as one of these rental services.
Exactly.
You could rent actual DVDs and VHS tapes, which are like DVDs, but there's an older form.
Well, I don't think you could ever rent VHS tapes, but you certainly
not from Netflix.
I'm sorry, not online. Okay, right. This was the 80s, right?
Yeah, and before
in the early 90s, maybe.
Before that, there was Blockbuster and a bunch of mom and pop stores
I'm going
that
back
did this
all the way to the 90s and 80s when I'm talking about VHS, and they had internal databases, where they record your information. And the same thing with the library. The same thing back in the day. If you look at I'm trying to think what those are called exactly, but there were little names of each individual who checked out a book. So if you looked at a book in a library, you could see who checked it out before you.
Oh yeah, you could.
Yeah, like there's a lot of privacy implications here.
I mean, I suppose with the library, you could always just give them a fake name. Like, how hard is it to get a library card? I can't imagine it's too difficult.
It's not too difficult, but they're going to ask. I know that they would ask you for like some sort of ID when you get a library card, and then that's what would go in the book, I believe. So I don't think you could like that easily avoid it. I mean, you might be able to walk. I mean, people would walk out with books, I guess, and not actually check them out. But I mean, then like that would be theft, and you could potentially get into trouble with that. But,
how is that theft? I mean, that's what they do. People, you walk into a library, you get a book, and you leave. Right? I don't understand, because you don't sign it out, suddenly it becomes theft. That seems strange to me. And I understand you're right. It would be theft to go into a library and just take a book.
There's like conditions upon you being given that book. They're not just giving anybody a book. They're only giving people a book with a library card.
Okay. Fair enough.
That have shown ID. So anyway, yeah, I think it would be fair to say that's theft. I mean, whether or not,
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting concept, libraries. And I can't believe they still exist in the modern world, because so few people read, first of all. I don't know how libraries have adapted to the change in this environment where so few people read. I remember when libraries first provided people with internet access and things like that. You could go there and you could use a computer, type your resume, print it out, whatever it was you needed to do, check your email, that sort of thing. This was like the mid-90s, late 90s, before everyone had a computer at home. And I could sort of see them going that direction.
Bad, but please tell me people can still read.
Technically, yeah. Well, isn't it like 25% of American high school graduates are functionally illiterate?
I don't even want to. Let's look. If you want to look this up, I'm really curious to know. 25%, and these kids are going on to college. How? I really want to know how they're getting into college, let alone like making it through. I guess they're not making it through college. But, well, no, a lot of them are though.
I'm finding difficult. Of course, we mentioned AI overviews, right? I asked Google, what is the percentage? I didn't ask, but I typed in percentage of American high school graduates who are illiterate. And I did not get a very good result. It gave me an AI overview that says, according to the National Center for Educational Statistics, nearly 2/3 of fourth graders in the United States read below grade level. Now, that's probably not good. However, it's got nothing to do with high school graduates. I didn't ask anything about fourth graders and how they read for their grade levels. Don't care.
Yeah, I'd be more interested in like what percentage of like sixth graders read at grade level, because by sixth grade you should, or not even at grade level, but are capable of. So the thing is, like, newspapers have been written for basically the reading level of a fifth grader. So the question I really am kind of wondering is what percentage of like sixth graders can read a newspaper and understand it.
I don't have that statistic.
Like, that's what I'd really like to know, because I think that's all that people really need to achieve is like a fifth grade reading level. But
which is really kind of sad when you think about it, because that's a really low reading level.
But that's what newspapers have traditionally been written for.
Yeah, but no one reads newspapers anymore. And the internet's written to a much lower.
I'm pretty sure that articles like that are written, news articles are still written to a fifth grade reading level. I mean,
I would be shocked if they're written that high. I would assume it was more like a second or third grade reading level that these things are written for.
I think you're thinking more of like television news, and it's obviously that's not a reading level, but
I'm thinking of like CNN.com or whatever news website people are going to. I would imagine that they're being written for people who read at like a third grade reading level, because every paragraph that you find on the internet, it's a maximum of 2 sentences. And then there's an image, and then they skip ahead, and there's 2 more sentences, and that comprises the entire paragraph.
It's probably
larger. I associate larger blocks of text with higher reading levels.
I mean, there are different outlets, obviously, and maybe some of them are writing to a lower or higher level of, competency, but
I just hate the way that the internet as a whole writes, especially that whole where a paragraph equals 2 lines, and if your paragraph is more than 2 lines or 3 lines at the most, then you're the devil, and how dare you?
I've noticed
TLDR.
That about like especially local news. I've been amazed at how little like information you get from local news. It's like couldn't you give us a little bit more detail as to what happened?
Many of these simply have one sentence paragraphs, and like where it's just one 8-word sentence, and then it moves on to the next one. And I'm like, guys, that's not a paragraph.
Yeah.
What is wrong with using paragraphs?
I don't know.
I do have statistics here, though. I don't have anything about sixth graders. I do, however, have 14% of adults in the United States cannot read. Now, that's not functionally illiterate, which is being able to read below an 8th grade level, I believe. That's what functionally illiterate is. These people are actually just straight up illiterate. 14% of adults in the U.S. simply cannot read. 21% of adults in the U.S. read below a 5th grade level. I would imagine this is the newspaper thing.
Okay, so what percentage of adults read below a 5th grade level?
21%.
21%.
That's freaking scary. I almost dropped an expletive there
Yeah.
because that's genuinely terrifying.
I'm aware that like high schoolers, so like 9th through 12th grade, like a much higher than 21% read below a 5th grade reading level.
19% of high school graduates in the U.S. cannot read.
It sounds to me like they're assuming that this is still the case. So this is overall with the populations, and schools have obviously changed over the decades, but
this is just in the U.S.
Right. So this statistic might be kind of on the high side relative to like people graduating today from high school, for example. But
I don't have when this study came out.
Yeah, well, that doesn't matter that much.
Or this compilation of various studies, I would suggest.
I would be surprised if the high school graduates I would bet that the high school graduates had a lower level of competency than in past decades.
That people are worse readers now than they were
I say
like
that
50 years
because
ago.
if you look at high school students in general, a very high percentage of them are not to a 5th grade reading level. And you would think that with the 3 additional years between elementary school and high school, that you would have gotten to at least a 5th grade reading level. But apparently that's not the case.
In my experience, a person either loves reading or they don't. And a love for literature is born at a very early age when they're like 3 or 4 years old. If their parents read to them a lot as their children, chances are good that they're going to read for themselves and they're going to enjoy it and therefore have higher reading levels. Reading, of course, is a skill like any other. The more people do it, the better they become at it. And these people simply are not reading. They don't think they're not interested in it. It's not a subject they want to pursue. They don't find that there is useful information in books and magazines and articles that they can read that they can't get out of perhaps a YouTube video. I would imagine that YouTube videos, and I don't want to keep demonizing YouTube. When I say YouTube videos, I'm not just blaming YouTube. I'm just blaming video content as a whole that takes information that could otherwise be presented in literary form and presents it in video form. I'm thinking, I play a lot of video games, and sometimes if I might get stuck in a video game, so I look online to find what a solution is, and almost all of the top results are like a 12-minute video of someone showing step-by-step how to get through this. And if you look hard enough, you can usually find an article that says the same thing, and I can get through that article in like a minute and a half tops. But the video, you can't, there's no way for you to watch the video quickly, right? I guess you could speed it up to 150% or 200% or whatever, but the information gained, it comes much more slowly.
Yeah. I think it's, you know what it comes down to? I think sometimes video is a preferable format when you're trying to figure out how to do something. Because sometimes
like changing an alternator in a car, I could see the value in that.
Maybe that, I don't know if that's even as good of an example, but like I'm thinking of like, okay, so I deal with routers and stuff for my job, and like if I want to figure something out, and I might just watch a video of somebody else doing it, because oftentimes the information, like people writing up like tutorials and things, they get it wrong or they leave something out. But if you watch somebody do a video, you're going to see all the settings exactly how they do it, and you can duplicate them. You might not be able to with a tutorial.
I could see that. And that's similar to the replacing an alternator thing, where it helps to see someone actually go through the steps.
But you're right about the tutorial being, if it's written, if it's accurate, you can go through it quicker.
Much quicker.
Yeah.
I would so much rather read something than watch a video about that same thing, because if you spend 30 minutes watching a video on, say, the Holocaust, you're going to learn, and I'm just using this as a random example.
Yeah.
you're going to learn some stuff about it. But if you read 30 minutes worth of articles or 30 minutes of a book about the Holocaust, you are going to gain so much more information in that time frame than you would by watching this video.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the video is sort of complementary to sort of the information in certain circumstances, especially like when you've spent 3 hours trying to get something figured out and it's missing some piece in like a tutorial or something like that. That's when I'm like, okay, well, you could have done this in an hour had you gone through the tutorial and then watched the video, if there is an associated video to find the part that's not quite right or hard to or was hard to understand that you got wrong.
I have the same issue with like text per minute. I mean, well, not text per minute. I was looking up two different things at the same time, and that's why I said that. I have the same issue with people sending me voice messages instead of text messages, right? Like, I understand that it takes them way less time to record a 40-second voice message. If you're typing it up with your phone, with your thumbs, it takes significantly longer to send a paragraph of text than it would to simply record it with your voice and hit the send button. But it takes so much longer to listen to that message than it does to read it.
Voice messages I find to be really annoying. But at the same time,
well, yeah, it's someone telling you they don't value your time.
I also don't like text messages, actually, because they don't give you enough information. And I like emails, assuming that people actually give you enough information, and they often don't. So it's like you're left responding with like asking questions about like what it is that they need help with.
Well, I don't mean this in a like tech support or formal setting. I just mean like conversing with your friends.
Yeah, but like
if your friends are regularly sending you 15-second voice messages, they respect their own time, but they don't respect yours. Because it takes you 15 seconds to listen to that voice message when if they sent it in text, it would take you 3 seconds to read all of that text.
I just know that people are so bad when it comes to their writing and like texting and stuff that it's like, what are you even trying to say? Like
that does happen occasionally, but it happens in speech as well.
75% of the time. And I think you're right, not to the same degree, but I think like 75% of texts are like, or emails even are like, you didn't give me enough information. Like, okay, you want me to do X on a certain date, but what time? Or like, there's just like, people just don't give you enough information.
Apparently, the average person, the average American at least, speaks around 150 words per minute, which is actually significantly higher than I would have expected it to be. However, a lot of that is going to be empty space. I suspect a lot of that is going to be poor word choices, repetition, and and pauses and things like that. So I'm not convinced when they say 150 words per minute that they mean it's actually 150 words of substance every single minute that's being said versus a human being able to read, the average adult, between 300 and 400 words per minute. So you read almost twice as fast as you can listen to the average speaker.
You know what else is interesting about that stat is it's probably massively different between somebody from the South and like maybe the New England region, because the New England region, people talk fast.
They do. And I had never noticed this until I went back to visit my family a few years ago, and they told me repeatedly, we need you to slow down. We can't understand anything that you're saying. You're talking way too quickly. And I'm like, I'm not even talking that fast. This is just normal speed. But they talk so slowly, and because of that, they're used to processing information very, very slowly.
Right.
Which probably just makes it worse when they're trying to watch a video versus when they're trying to read something. More of this coming up. Plus, Trump has made French fries at McDonald's. Actually, I think it's only fair that we call them freedom fries. We're going to talk about that. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Some of you have wanted to support Free Talk Live's mission on a monthly basis, but don't want to support Patreon. Now we have an alternative that also helps our premier streaming platform, Odyssey. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click Join at the top of the channel. You can subscribe for $5 per month, and unlike other subscription services, Odyssey adds their processing fee on top, so it'll cost a little over $5 per month, but Free Talk Live will receive the entire amount you pledged. Higher donation tiers are available if you're feeling so inspired. You'll get a special membership badge that's visible in the Odyssey chat room, and if we get enough supporters, we may enable members-only chat. This new subscription method is a great way to decentralize our direct listener support away from just Patreon and also support a libertarian-run business, Odyssey. Please visit video.freetalklive.com and click join to subscribe to our Odyssey channel and help support spreading our message around the planet. Visit video.freetalklive.com and click join today.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. US Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are virtually neck and neck across the 7 battleground states, with just 2 weeks left of campaigning before the 2024 presidential election, according to a new poll. A Washington Post Shah School poll of more than 5,000 registered voters taken during the first half of October found both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump with 47% support among those who said they will definitely or probably cast a ballot. Among likely voters, the vice president leads in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, while Trump enjoys advantages in Arizona and North Carolina. They're tied with 48% support in Nevada. The survey has a margin of error of 1.7 percentage points. Sean Diddy Combs is facing 7 new lawsuits, including allegations that he raped a minor. The music mogul already faces criminal sex trafficking and racketeering charges in the US. He's denied the allegations, with his lawyers saying in court the truth will prevail. Sally Patterson reports from New York.
Sean Combs is accused of rape and sexual assault in New York, Los Angeles and Las Vegas. The plaintiffs are both men and women. One says she was 13 when she was allegedly raped at a music awards after party. Several of the allegations involve drugs and alcohol. In a statement, Combs' lawyers say he's never sexually assaulted anyone, adult or minor, man or woman. He's currently being held in a Brooklyn jail over separate criminal charges. Prosecutors accuse the rapper of creating a criminal enterprise. Combs has denied any criminal wrongdoing.
Death row inmate Robert Roberson will not testify in a hearing on Monday after a bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers took unprecedented measures to subpoena him to save him from execution last week. Many believe Roberson is innocent and that his conviction of shaking his 2-year-old daughter Nikki to death hinges on, quote, junk science. Tony Waterman reports from Texas.
Roberson was meant to testify via video, but officials said his autism and years of solitary confinement made him ill-suited for video conferencing. Among those who did testify was TV personality Dr. Phil McGraw, who said he was 100% convinced that Roberson was facing a miscarriage of justice, saying his conviction hinges on outdated science. There is evidence Nikki may have died from undiagnosed pneumonia. The unprecedented subpoena has now kicked off a legal battle that will push Roberson's execution back at least 3 months.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You can take control of the airwaves, talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 if you would like to do that. Again, the number is 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And I want to tell you about this hour sponsor. That would be Dash. We are brought to you by Dash, short for Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency made for spending. Dash transactions are irreversible, so Dash is great for merchants. Another reason cryptocurrency is great for merchants is because credit card processing companies charge a fee, and frequently the merchant is the one who pays that fee. Now, a lot of merchants do charge you a surcharge on top of that, but the way the system is set up, where like if a merchant accepts Visa or MasterCard or whatever, they're being charged like a 1, 2, 3, up to, I think I've seen up to 6% fee on every transaction. With cryptocurrency, the end user, the consumer, pays that fee directly. Anyway, its network, the Dash network that is also protected by 51% attacks by its chain locks technology. We want to say thank you to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash, and you can learn more at Dash.org. One more time, that is Dash.org. Now, the most interesting thing I've seen over this weekend, I don't pay any attention to politics outside of lately the commercials I see for one candidate or the other. And there's one in New Hampshire for someone running for Senate that is trying to be a Jeopardy spoof. And it's animated. It has these characters asking, I don't remember what it is, but the question is, what makes this candidate unfit for Senate? And it's so cringy and so bad that I cannot believe someone paid to have this commercial made. I want to vote for whoever did not make that commercial. I don't remember now if it's for the candidate or against the candidate. I don't even care. I just want to find out who made this commercial.
You may not even know.
Yeah, because you can't tell.
Right.
And my favorite example of this is the signs that you see throughout New Hampshire and probably other places that say Trump closed borders, Kamala or Harris open borders. Now, obviously, this is not true. Kamala Harris does not advocate open borders. I know this because I advocate open borders, and nothing she has said has ever come even close to wanting open borders. But I don't know if this sign was put up by Trump supporters or Harris supporters. And it could go either way, right? Like if you're a Democrat, you'd probably be happy about Kamala Harris being open borders. Of course, she's not, but that's probably what Democrats would like to believe.
Well, Democrats have in the past, in the recent past, have said they were open borders, but then they get into office and they're like, oh, well, that's not what I mean. It's like when people call them out for their policies being the same as the prior, their opposition, right? So it's like if the Democrats and the Republicans have the same policies, it's like, how do you call yourself open borders when Trump or whoever is, got policies that are super restrictive and even getting more restrictive?
They are exactly the same policies. Nothing in the immigration policy changed when we went from Barack Obama to Donald Trump or from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. The FEMA camps remained operational along the border. Yep. Families continued to get separated from one another at the border. The children were taken away from their parents at the border. None of this changed when Joe Biden became president. And none of it will change when Donald Trump becomes president or when Kamala Harris becomes president. I'm not as convinced that Donald Trump is going to come out ahead. I was completely sure that Donald Trump was going to beat Joe Biden. Right, that was a given. But that was because Donald Trump looks sane and reasonable and cogent next to the dementia patient who may or may not be pooping his pants. But when you take that away and you put Donald Trump next to like an ordinary person, and you have both an ordinary person and Donald Trump speaking, it becomes very, very clear that Donald Trump is only slightly more hinged than Joe Biden was.
I feel like both of them have, both the Democrats and the Republicans here, so Harris and Trump here, have kind of both toned things down, and maybe it's just because I'm not paying attention, but like I feel like they both kind of toned things down in various areas. Like the Democrats were very anti-crypto for a while, and then they kind of cut back on that once they realized that like there was all this money in crypto if they like didn't say anything negative against crypto. But it's not like their policies are going to change as a result, I don't think. And Trump is the same way. Trump like is doing some crypto thing now, or his son is doing some crypto thing now, and like he's got a reverse flip on the whole crypto thing.
Well, Melania has been pimping the Solana cryptocurrency for quite a while.
Okay.
It's like since before I even went to prison. Like Ian and I discussed that on Free Talk Live. I think Solana is just like another US dollar tether, but I'm not completely sure. Or it's another Ethereum competitor. I don't know. I was under prohibitions at the time that kept me from really looking into it, and I didn't really care anyway. But she did have some association with the Solana or Solania. I guess it's Solana.
She being who exactly?
Melania Trump.
Oh, okay.
It's either his wife or his daughter. I don't really remember what their names are.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you their kids' names, his kids' names either. I just know that it was his son who supposedly did something with crypto here recently. So
Yeah, that'd be-
I didn't know the
yeah.
daughter had done anything, because that's
I think she just promoted it on Twitter, or something.
It's kind of interesting because Trump was definitely like poo-pooing crypto before, but he wasn't anti-crypto. I think it's kind of the best way to phrase it. Whereas Harris and the Democrats have been very anti-crypto. And particularly, who's the Mass? I think it's a Mass senator. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but I'm terrible with names and politicians because I can't.
I mean, the most prominent one would be Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, I think she might be the one who's really, 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 really hates crypto. And
She visited
so
our
hostile.
federal prison. Yeah, that's her. She
Yeah.
visited the federal prison that I was at when I was actually in federal prison. And they made a big deal about this and the possibility that, Elizabeth Warren is going to be walking through here. We might get a chance to say something to her to get our conditions improved or to get some law changed or whatever. And I felt so bad for these people who were so...
brainwashed?
Yeah, brainwashed.
Brainwashed?
And
Yeah.
deluded about their current situation. Like, they are going to select like 3 or 4 inmates that they know they control.
Yeah.
That they can tell them exactly what to say. And they're not going to tell them exactly what to say because they're smarter than that.
Yeah.
But they're going to handpick the inmates that are going to meet Elizabeth Warren.
Yep.
And no one else will have any contact with her whatsoever. She will be surrounded by a delegation of probably 30 to 50 people, and nothing unexpected is going to happen during her visit. And all of them are employed specifically to make sure that there's no chance that this random inmate is going to approach her and talk about how conditions are bad at the prison. Like, all of the efforts they are putting in are designed to keep that from happening.
And why would anybody even think that, like, she would care? I mean, she put you in there in the first place, and she has all these authoritarian policies and rules and like laws that she herself has like contributed to and proposed.
Well, like you said, they're brainwashed. They
Yeah.
believe that, she's a Democrat, so she actually cares. However, we did have a federal judge visit our facility as well. And this guy notably did not arrive with an entourage. He came by himself. I imagine there were like some cops with him or whatever, but like he wasn't surrounded by a bunch of sycophants who were looking to make sure that nothing unexpected happened. He did actually meet with and talk to some of the inmates, including some whose case he actually oversaw. And as a result of this, he did release one person from federal prison early once he saw what the conditions were like at this facility.
Interesting.
Because they weren't good. I mean, guys, there's black mold everywhere. Like, it's unfit for human habitation.
See, this is what you should have been talking about, like, all along.
I did talk about it.
I don't remember. You said it was like you had a great time, and okay, that's a little bit of an exaggeration.
It was certainly not a great time.
But you were like, nothing happened, and like, yeah.
I mentioned repeatedly that the showers were
filled.
filled with black mold. The majority of them didn't even work.
Yeah, this is what you should be telling people.
I've said all of this.
Tell us again, because I certainly do not remember this.
Okay, well, there's 16 total. There were 16, and I say that, I'll get into why in a minute, but there were 16 total showers in this facility, sort of in a hallway that is like T-shaped. And along one wall was 6 of them, and on the other one was the other 8.
How many of them actually worked?
That's what I was getting into. At first, 9 of them worked. I'm not 100% sure. It may have been 10.
How many people?
We peaked at 90 people.
Wow.
So yes, but it gets worse. We had 9 working showers, but then some people came through and they were like, guys, this is unacceptable. There's black mold everywhere. This is not fit for human habitation. You've got to do something about it. So their solution was to knock out some of the showers and tear up the concrete and stuff, do a bunch of construction. The result of this was that 4 of the working showers were along that wall. So we went down to 5 working showers for all 90 something.
5 showers for 90 people.
Yes. And of course, those continued to have black mold and stuff in them because they wouldn't allow us to have bleach, which is one of the few things that actually kills black mold. And presumably bleach is a health hazard, I guess, but they wouldn't let us have it, even though that would have killed the black mold. So we went down to 5 working showers, and these were not good showers. The water pressure, for some amazing reason, it would change from one shower to the next. And like some of them had good water pressure, some of them didn't. Some of them had only hot water, some of them had no hot water. There were 2 showers that had both hot water and good water pressure, and of course both of those were among the ones that were demolished. So we went down to like 5 subpar showers, one of which had good hot water but very low water pressure. Is just
I got another question for you now.
horrific experience.
How often did you get to shower?
Every day.
Every day. Okay.
But this was because I showered when we weren't supposed to. I showered after lights out because that was easier for me. And like no one seemed to object to that because like I was the only trans person there. So like I could go and other people showered then too. It was we weren't monitored as much. They did walkthroughs at midnight, 3 in the morning and 5 in the morning.
Okay, so you could shower like what was curfew? Was that or lights out? I guess
lights out was 10 o'clock.
Okay, so you had from 10 to 12 to get back and not be like caught.
Right, but they didn't really care. Like people frequently would stay up and play chess and cards in the rec room.
Okay,
and that was fine. No one cared about that.
Okay,
and they would even stay up, later than that, and it's fine as long as when they do their walkthrough, you're in your bunk. You don't have to be in bed. You don't have to pretend to be asleep because they don't care. You just have to be physically in your bunk because they're actually counting people to make sure that everyone is still there. So you can't be in the rec room when they do that. So there was no issue for people to be in the bathroom or in the shower at, 10 o'clock at night. And that's when I preferred to do it because when it was quieter, there were fewer people in there and it was just an easier environment. But we only had 5 showers in the first place. So after they did all of this, more and more people started doing that. And it just became a point where like I would go in there to shower and all 5 of them would have people in there and I had to come back half an hour later.
10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is
and sometimes
this is the crazy thing about like prisons. Like people are like, oh, they're living in luxury. They have televisions and stuff. Yeah. Televisions with nothing on, not, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because it's like cable television. And it's always that one channel that one prisoner wants to watch. And it's the most boring channel, right?
That did happen a lot with the whites television because there were 3 televisions. One was for the blacks, one was for the Spanish, and one was for the whites, more or less. You could watch whatever TV you wanted, but when it came to determining what is going to be playing on this television and this television, that was divided on the matter of race. And it was almost always the case that the black television was tuned to sports or BET, where the Spanish television was almost always tuned to sports or some Spanish channel. The white television would flip back and forth between various things, sometimes even like bad sci-fi movies on like Saturday afternoons. But they did have televisions and, there was, I don't want to say there was luxury because there certainly wasn't, but I want to get back to how bad the situation was because on a number of occasions, like the sewage actually backed up and overflowed out of the drains in the shower and out of the toilets and out of the sinks and like into the floor. And this was horrific.
That's unsanitary.
It happened.
That's torture kind of. That's like this reminds me very much of a prisoner who was thrown into a cage that was full of feces, and they concluded, like some court ruled that was constitutional because they had never informed there was no precedent to say that was not torture, basically. And so like the guards in the prison, everybody got off scot-free. It's like, how is that not a violation of the cruel and unusual punishment statute? Like obviously it is, but they couldn't actually get a trial because there was no precedent.
What we ended up doing, the guards and the COs and the administration did nothing about this. So we inmates, we got a bunch of towels and blankets and stuff out of the laundry room and we put them under the doors to keep it from leaking out into the hallways. Now, it did leak out into the hallways. There was like pools of sewage water leaking out into the hallways and into the rec room. And if you wanted to go to the bathroom, you had to go all the way to the other side of the building to the visiting area and use one of those. And this is a bit of a problem because 1, it's a long walk, and 2, every time you flushed in there, it backed up more sewage in the main bathroom that we all use because they didn't fix the drain. They didn't fix the drainage issue. So anytime you flushed there, it just pumped it out somewhere else. And that somewhere else was the bathroom that, we used to shower in or whatever. So like for several days, we couldn't shower. They did ultimately fix that.
All right. So this whole shower thing every day is a bit of a stretch.
Yeah, there were like 3 days where I wasn't able to shower. And one of those was because we didn't have hot water, and 2 of them were because of the sewage issue. Like, as much as I would rather be clean, I feel like you're not getting clean if you're showering ankle deep in sewage.
Yeah, that doesn't sound sanitary at all. It's actually a health hazard, as you pointed out. I forget, was there any, I am curious, did anybody get any of the diseases? I don't even remember what diseases come as a result of that, but there are diseases that you get that are serious. Do you know if anybody got infected, or you hear anything like that?
To my knowledge, nothing like that
People
happened.
were probably smart enough just to avoid going to the bathroom for
once
a
we
couple
found out
days
that
or whatever.
once we found out that this has happened, we closed it off as much as we could, and we just used the other bathrooms down there at the end. And the administration did send some people out the next day who attempted to fix it, and they got it working temporarily. But it gets worse, because the problem came back a few days later. And this time, it didn't just bubble up into the bathroom that we all used. It also bubbled up into the walk-ins in the kitchen. Now, a walk-in, that's a refrigerator, for those who don't know. And it had drainage in there, just like you have the drainage in the showers. And it bubbled up into there where all of the food is stored.
This is like this is the problem. Like they have exemptions for like prisons and things for like health inspection and like all this other stuff that you would expect from a restaurant. They don't go to the prisons, of course. It's like somehow like you're literally only in there. In your case, you were in a camp. You weren't even in a normal prison that you'd see on television. And yet,
well, the same thing happened in the unit that Ian was at, which was a normal low security prison.
Yeah,
it did happen, I think, in the unit that he was in.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't just there at the camp that this stuff happened. It also happened in the low security facility as well.
This is just crazy. The lack of like you would take care of a dog better than these individuals in these camps in the low security prison. And these people don't have death sentences. We're not talking about murderers and rapists and things. We're talking about like people who've done small itty bitty crimes that in many cases most people wouldn't even consider to be crimes. Like
the majority of them were drug dealers.
Like it's like nobody got harmed, and yet you're putting them in a situation that puts their life in jeopardy.
So the orderlies and the kitchen staff, they cleaned up the sewage out of the walk-ins, but the smell remained for several weeks after the fact, because that is a
closed area, right? For the most part.
Yeah, and there are fans but it is a closed area, and that is a pungent odor, and it lingers, right? You can't just take a septic tank and spray it down with a water hose and then it doesn't stink anymore. No, that smell is going to be there probably for the rest of its life. You would think, though, once they got it cleaned up, the next step would be to throw out all of the food.
Yeah.
Rinse, totally clean all of the containers and get entirely new food in. That is not what happened. All of the food that was in there at the time that the sewage bubbled up into the walk-in was still used.
Oh my gosh.
And there was, and the staff knew about it. The administration knew about it.
Please tell me that this was at least like sealed or wrapped in plastic of some kind at a minimum before it was removed from the freezer.
So the walk-in had 3 different parts to it. And the part where the sewage leaked into was sealed off from the other 2 areas with doors.
Okay.
But doors don't really stop water when they're not waterproof doors, and these weren't. And they certainly don't stop germs and stuff. But their reasoning was that the doors were shut in the 2 walk-ins where the food is actually stored. So all of that is fine. But you go in there and you still smell sewage, and you're like, no, this is absolutely not fine. And this is probably a violation of numerous laws, to say nothing of the Geneva Convention. I don't think you're allowed to feed people food.
It probably violates the Geneva Convention, but it doesn't violate U.S. law because they have an exception to it under U.S. law.
I don't think you're allowed to serve people onions that have been sprayed down with sewage, though. I think you're probably not allowed to do that.
No.
But this wasn't the only time that stuff like that happened. Now, prisons are a huge fan of group punishments, where if they find a phone or drugs or cigarettes or whatever, and it's in a common area like the rec area or the computer room, everyone in the unit gets punished. Now, once upon a time, people believed in justice, which was this idea that I would rather 1,000 guilty people go free than for one innocent person to be punished wrongfully.
Yep.
No, that got thrown out, man. The prison system doesn't care at all about that. If it finds a phone in a common area, even though they know that phone only belonged to one person, everyone there is getting punished unless that person comes forward. But no one is ever going to do that because the punishment for having a phone is so completely disproportional to the act of having a phone. Now, people aren't using these to plan like an El Chapo style escape where like someone's going to land out there with a helicopter and they're going to flee to Canada. None of that's happening. They just want to FaceTime with their girlfriends and with their loved ones and stuff like that. That's all these phones were ever used for. No one ever did anything nefarious with them. But the punishment for doing it was you would lose. One guy lost like 170 days of good time. So his sentence was extended by half a year. Plus, they raise your security level, so you go to a higher security facility. If you're in the minimum, you go to the low. If you're in the low, you go to a medium, and so on. Plus, you lose visits for 6 months. No family members allowed to visit you. You lose phone privileges for several months.
So messed up.
Yeah, and all of this for just having a cell phone so that you could FaceTime with your girlfriend or whatever it was that people were doing. Completely disproportionate. The worst is that you could also be charged with having an escape tool. Because
I'm sorry, what?
They consider cell phones to be a tool
How is
that
a
one
cell
uses.
phone an escape tool?
Because you could contact someone who owns a helicopter, some friend of yours, like.
But you could do that through other means.
Yes, but if you use their phone system or their computer system, then they're going to know about it.
They're going to say it's monitored, and therefore,
Right.
Okay, well, what about the guy who's being released tomorrow?
Right, which also is a possibility, right? But that's their argument, is that having a phone is an escape tool.
That is ridiculous.
And the result is that you can be charged with that, which is an additional crime that can add up to 2 more years to your sentence. In addition to losing the good time and spending 6 months in solitary and losing visits for 6 months after that, in addition to all of that stuff, you can be sentenced to you can be charged with a new crime, convicted, and sentenced to 2 additional years in prison just for having a cell phone because you wanted to FaceTime your girlfriend. So no one's ever going to come forward and claim responsibility for that.
No, of course not.
So what
happens to the whole group then at that point?
Usually, by the end of it, we would lose commissary for 3 or 4 weeks. No ability to buy stamps or paper or pens or hygiene products. And all of these things are obviously, you are required to have access to stamps and hygiene products according to the Geneva Convention. But they didn't care.
Right, of course not.
If they found a cell phone, no stamps for you guys for 3 weeks. Good luck.
Yeah, they don't have to follow their own rules.
No. Barbaric system, 603-283-6160. There's more coming up here. It is Free Talk Live.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. Rising fees have made Bitcoin useless for purchases, but Dash continues to have fees less than 1 cent per transaction, and its features ensure Dash is undefeated as the most useful cryptocurrency in the marketplace. From a technical standpoint, Dash transactions are irreversible, and its network is protected from 51% attacks by their Chainlocks technology. There's no need to wait for a confirmation before considering a Dash transaction complete, so it's great for merchants. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at Dash.org. Big thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit Dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. US Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are virtually neck and neck across the 7 battleground states, with just 2 weeks left of campaigning before the 2024 presidential election, according to a new poll. A Washington Post Shah School poll of more than 5,000 registered voters taken during the first half of October found both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump with 47% support among those who said they will definitely or probably cast a ballot. Among likely voters, the vice president leads in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, while Trump enjoys advantages in Arizona and North Carolina. They're tied with 48% support in Nevada. The survey has a margin of error of 1.7 percentage points. Sean Diddy Combs is facing 7 new lawsuits, including allegations that he raped a minor. The music mogul already faces criminal sex trafficking and racketeering charges in the US. He's denied the allegations, with his lawyers saying in court the truth will prevail. Sally Patterson reports from New York.
Sean Combs is accused of rape and sexual assault in New York, Los Angeles and Las Vegas. The plaintiffs are both men and women. One says she was 13 when she was allegedly raped at a music awards after party. Several of the allegations involve drugs and alcohol. In a statement, Combs' lawyers say he's never sexually assaulted anyone, adult or minor, man or woman. He's currently being held in a Brooklyn jail over separate criminal charges. Prosecutors accuse the rapper of creating a criminal enterprise. Combs has denied any criminal wrongdoing.
Death row inmate Robert Roberson will not testify in a hearing on Monday after a bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers took unprecedented measures to subpoena him to save him from execution last week. Many believe Roberson is innocent and that his conviction of shaking his 2-year-old daughter Nikki to death hinges on, quote, junk science. Tony Waterman reports from Texas.
Roberson was meant to testify via video, but officials said his autism and years of solitary confinement made him ill-suited for video conferencing. Among those who did testify was TV personality Dr. Phil McGraw, who said he was 100% convinced that Roberson was facing a miscarriage of justice, saying his conviction hinges on outdated science. There is evidence Nikki may have died from undiagnosed pneumonia. The unprecedented subpoena has now kicked off a legal battle that will push Roberson's execution back at least 3 months.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, with more today on the burgeoning diplomatic crisis between India and Canada, following the killing of a Sikh cleric in British Columbia last year, and fresh allegations by Canada that India has been plotting to murder Sikh leaders on Canadian soil. The issue erupted anew last week when Canada expelled 6 diplomats, and India furiously denied any involvement in any kind of plot, demanding that the Canadian authorities provide evidence to support their allegations. Carla Ann Robbins is with America's Council on Foreign Relations.
We know that Russians go around murdering their opponents overseas. Certainly we know the famous case of Jamal Khashoggi from the Saudis. We really don't expect this from a sort of democracy like India. These diplomats are accused of being part of a broad criminal network to harass Canadian Sikhs. And they say they're tied to this murder in June of Sikh separatist leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. So this has become a really, really high-profile face-off between the Indian and Canadian governments.
Meanwhile, the United States is backing Canada's claims and is urging India to cooperate fully with the investigation launched by America's northern neighbour. The row has plunged Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's relationship with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi into the deep freeze and could soon have implications for the US-India relationship as well. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. US Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are virtually neck and neck across the 7 battleground states. Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs is facing 7 new lawsuits. And death row inmate Robert Roberson will not testify after a bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers took unprecedented measures to subpoena him to save him from execution last week. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
The NFL announces a new zero-tolerance policy on videotaped domestic violence. A puzzled nation can remember the name Ferguson, but is not sure from where. And a man wearing an M&M jacket is apparently made in God's image. This is the Onion Week in Review. Tech giant Apple unveiled a brief, fleeting moment of excitement to the general public. The short-lived, ephemeral sense of wonder was released in front of an exclusive group of reporters and industry insiders at Apple's Silicon Valley headquarters.
Apple really made us wait, but this rapidly diminishing glimmer of pleasure was totally worth it. It was 100% better than any other temporary joys I've ever experienced.
And in this week's local news, an uneasy détente forms between a man sitting on a patio and a bee. In other news, a poll finds 80% of Americans would get in a vehicle with a stranger for a chance at a new life. Bank of America introduces a new $50 underdraft fee, and the nation's huggers announce plans for you to get over here.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live. You can join us 603-283-6160 if you would like to do that. Again, the number 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And, of course, Free Talk Cast is back, brought to you by the same people who do Free Talk Live. It's our podcast. It's about 30 to 45 minutes per week. It releases once a week. There were a few weeks that we took off due to miscellaneous things going wrong in people's lives. I had recorded an episode from my house, but onto the studio computer here in Keene, because that was the smartest way to go about doing it. And then when I went to edit the audio and upload it, it was gone. And I was looking on my computer for it, and there was, of course, no trace of it whatsoever. And there was no recent files where I could find it. It wasn't saved as a WAV or an MP3. It was just gone. And there was no trace that I recorded it at all. Until I came here like 2 weeks ago to do the show, and I found it there, sitting in a folder here. And then I remembered, oh yeah, that was because I recorded it onto this computer. So I did ultimately end up processing that and getting it up online. It went up last week as, I think, episode number 16. We've already got episode number 17 recorded, where Nikki and I discuss fluoride. Of course, that episode will be coming out this Friday. She's coming over again this week to record the next episode. So basically, that's all moving forward. Again, check it out at freetalkcast.com. That's the best place to go if you want to listen to it, but it's also on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartMedia, all of those places where you find the Free Talk Live podcast. You also find Free Talk Cast there as both its own thing and as part of the Free Talk Live RSS feed. So if you're subscribed to Free Talk Live on any of these platforms, you will get Free Talk Cast. However, you also can subscribe directly to Free Talk Cast and not get all of the other stuff on the Free Talk Live RSS feed, which is like the digest and the Free Talk Live audio archives, as well as like Beer Talk Live and miscellaneous other shows like Declare Your Independence. If you want just the Free Talk Cast for whatever reason, that option exists. The best place to find links to all of that is to just go to freetalkcast.com. That's the best place to go to do that. And that helps me find out who's listening to it and what topics tend to be more popular than not. There are upcoming changes to the format of the show to make it a little more streamlined. But at the moment, like, it's radio people sitting down to discuss something for about 30 minutes. And we do this sort of thing regularly here on Free Talk Live. But this sort of trims out the excess. It trims out the fat. And it's just the meat. And it's just, usually me and Nikki sitting down to have a conversation. The most recent episode is an interview I did with these 4 guys called, I don't remember. They changed the name of their show recently. It was the Crypto S show, but they had hard times branding that, as you might imagine. So they changed it to something else, and I don't remember what they changed it to off the top of my head. It's not the best episode because they recorded using their webcam microphones and not like dedicated microphones and headphones. And like, I was not expecting that when I interviewed them. I just thought it was going to be a given that they would have, wired mics and headphones and stuff like that. So audio quality, not the best there's ever been. The audio quality is in fact so bad that I didn't really even want to release the episode.
Webcam audio is terrible.
Yeah, but and then,
like it's beyond use. Like it's totally useless as far as like any kind of podcast or radio show is concerned.
It's pretty bad.
Like you can't even understand what people are saying for the most part on like webcam audio.
And every webcam is different. Some of the guys had pretty good webcams. It was pretty clear that one of them at least was using like the built-in webcam on his laptop and the built-in microphone.
Oh
there.
yeah, that's going to be terrible.
Oh, he came in so much louder than everyone else. And it took me like 2 or 3 minutes of him talking to find the option in Jitsi to turn down his microphone. And once I did that, it was a lot better and a lot clearer. But like the gain on your default webcam is way too high. And that's because it needs to pick you up while you're sitting, 1.5 to 2, maybe 3 feet from it. And to accommodate that, they crank the gain up very, very high. And it turns out it's not good. It sounds tinny. And look, there's nothing I could do about it, but I recorded it and I was like, this needs to be out there. So we put it out there. Next episode, of course, is me and Nikki, so I won't have those issues. You can find that at freetalkcast.com. Before that, I don't remember what we did an episode on, but we talk about various subjects. She's, I don't want to say expert because I don't know if she would approve of calling her an expert, but in my opinion, she's an expert on like child rearing and home birthing and helping women do what women need to do in order to give birth to healthy babies. And that's sort of what she specializes in. And yoga. She's sort of dropping the yoga thing from her purview, as far as I can tell, and focusing on home births and motherhood expectancy and preparing women for that. So that's all really awesome stuff. So she tends to bring in a lot of health-related topics. And
all I'm thinking of is, so she said less alcohol, cocaine, weed.
Definitely she would not encourage
like that
one
kind of thing
to be doing copious amounts of cocaine while pregnant. Yeah, I feel confident Nikki would advise against that. But in other things that people are doing, Donald Trump is running for president, apparently. And it's all a very confusing things. I saw last week that he had apparently been serving up fries at McDonald's, from what I can tell. And
that's a huge fall. I mean, from where it was a couple weeks ago.
I've got a video here of him doing it, but there's so much talking from newscasters and stuff that it's just not worth getting into. But the actual, it's not worth playing the audio here, but the actual video here of Trump actually like frying McDonald's.
All right, you got to give us
fries.
more information on this.
So it was part of a campaign thing, right? Where apparently to prove that
how is it a campaign thing?
He wanted to prove that he's in touch with the average person.
Is this like mocking them? Like this seems like it would have the opposite effect.
It's actually a little bit worse than that, because apparently Kamala Harris is claiming that she worked in fast food when she was in college.
Okay.
And Donald Trump is like,
so
no,
he's going to prove that he can. Oh, it's a jab at her. Okay, I get you. It's a jab at his opposition. I got you.
And it's the same reason that when politicians go to speak to construction workers or whatever, they wear hard hats. It's that kind of thing. He's trying to
see this changed. It went from being offensive to being, oh, that's kind of funny.
Oh, it's stupid.
It's stupid, but stupid funny.
But I don't know that. Yeah, I don't think it would qualify as offensive.
Yeah, I don't think it would be offensive either.
But according to CNN, McDonald's has been thrust into the 2024 election, gaining attention over the weekend when former President Donald Trump served fries at a Pennsylvania location.
I mean, that's funny now that I think, like, the more I think about it, that's really funny because he's mocking his opposition.
I don't think that was the only reason he did it, though. I mean, based on what I know about politicians, I think his main goal here was to just say, look,
Get
guys,
attention, media attention. It's obviously a stunt.
well, everything they do is a publicity
Right.
stunt. But I think this was meant to appeal to normal people because a lot of Americans do work fast food. Most of them are living paycheck to paycheck and like working as a fry cook at
and
McDonald's.
he's mocking the fact that she probably didn't actually like do a real job ever in her whole life, and he's just like admitting that he hasn't either. But he's making fun of her in the process. That I think that's hilarious.
So the company that owns this particular model is part of a franchise, so it's independently owned and operated. Apparently people are like, oh, how come McDonald's didn't prevent this from happening? But it's because it's a franchise and they can hire whoever they want. And that includes Donald Trump. Apparently a lot of people are also disappointed because they closed down this location for 6 hours or whatever while Donald Trump was going to be there. Apparently they thought that, you know, it wouldn't be a media stunt and they could just go up to this McDonald's and meet the president and have him hand them French fries. They didn't realize that, no, the people who were going to be getting French fries were carefully selected. Look, people, everything around Donald Trump and Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is carefully selected. It's carefully controlled to make sure that nothing unexpected ever happens. They're not going to allow you to pull up to the McDonald's drive-thru and see Donald Trump and have a completely unscripted, unexpected interaction with him when they know nothing about you. They are never going to allow that. Everything around these people is carefully controlled. And you have to ask yourself, who is doing this controlling? Who is it that's determining what people are allowed to be around Donald Trump and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris? And why are they working so hard to make sure that you, the average person, cannot have contact with them unless they already have done a full background check on you and know exactly what you want to say to them? You have to ask that kind of question. So obviously, this company is completely free to invite political candidates to serve fries. The company said Saturday in an internal memo to employees that it did not invite Trump or the attention the election has brought it. But the company spun the spotlight as proof that none of this makes sense, as proof that McDonald's remains a key part of everyday American life for millions of people. And that's true. Millions of people do continue to eat at McDonald's, but at the staged event, Donald Trump put on an apron to work as a fry attendant and handed people food at the location, which had been closed for the campaign stop. Now look, I've worked at a McDonald's, and the person cooking the fries is not the person who hands food to people at the window. Those are two very different jobs. You don't have the dude in the apron serving people the food. And it's the same thing at every restaurant. Just stop to think about it. You don't have the cook coming out with the platter to hand to the people at the table.
Are the fries separate from the? I feel like the fries might be part of the job of somebody up front though, as opposed to the cook.
They usually bag them, yes. But the person bagging, they usually have a little container there because the person who cooks the fries does that in the fryer and then he dumps them into this bin that the people at the front have access to.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so it's cooked by an actual cook of some kind, and then yeah,
and the cook wears the apron because they don't want to splash grease all over them and stuff because that grease is boiling hot and it's viciously painful. I want to know, did Donald Trump get a grease burn while cooking these fries? Because I have worked at McDonald's. I also worked at a Popeyes way back in the day, a Popeyes chicken. And the number of grease burns, like it was daily, where we would get grease burns on us. Eventually you stop noticing it because you just have burns all over your hands and forearms from grease. It's a very painful experience. And people who do that don't get paid enough to undergo that kind of damage to their bodies. I mean, they are undergoing and receiving burns on an almost daily basis. And for that, they're being paid, $9 or $10 an hour. It's actually much better these days where they're usually starting out at like $15 an hour. And that's pretty good.
All I'm thinking in the back of my head is check, never work at McDonald's.
Yeah, definitely. I would highly recommend against it. And definitely against Popeyes because everything served at Popeyes chicken is cooked in the fryers, except the biscuits, obviously. But everything else, and the rice, I guess, they do have ovens to cook the rice. But almost all of the products are cooked in the fryers. McDonald's, you only get the onion rings and the fries and like the chicken nuggets and the filet fish. As I'm listing these things, they do fry a lot of their stuff. And all of those things run the risk of burning you. And it's going to happen if you work in any food establishment. You're going to get burns on you at some point somewhere along the way because you're going to get busy. And when you get busy, you start taking shortcuts, which is inevitable. And you kind of have to service the 5,000 people who have decided they absolutely have to eat at your restaurant today during this dinner rush.
Yeah.
And you're going to get burns on you. It's going to happen. So I want to know, did Donald Trump get burns on him from cooking French fries? I'm willing to bet he did not, because they did close off the store. And as a result of that, they weren't experiencing like high volume or anything. But that's another reason they would close this off. If people found out that Donald Trump was there, there would be miles of cars waiting to go to this establishment. They would not have nearly enough French fries to serve the people the number of fries that they were wanting. And then you'd have weirdo Republicans who would like enshrine these French fries because they last forever, because nothing McDonald's makes is actually like organic and healthy. So they would just have them permanently on their mantelpiece as like the centerpiece, invite people into the home. Come and look at the Donald Trump fries that I bought from McDonald's.
Did you say 6 hours they closed this McDonald's?
I don't know how many hours it was. When I said 6 hours, I was speaking off the cuff. I don't know how long it was closed.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was just saying, if it was for 6 hours, man, that's a long time. Like, you think that they would just be in and out like within an hour.
Yeah, they may have closed it for a total of 6 hours, but Donald Trump was definitely not there on his feet frying fries for 6 hours.
There's no way.
Certainly not. So I don't know how long it was closed, but I imagine a few hours before his arrival. They may not have even opened that day, you know. But a few hours before his arrival, they probably closed. Then the Secret Service came in and did their thing, made sure there were no snipers in the walk-in or whatever. Made sure there was no sewage bubbling up in the walk-in, because you can't have the president around that, because that's, you know, a health code violation and probably a violation of the Geneva Convention. So you can't have those sorts of things going on. And then probably for a few hours after he left, it was closed off. So I would imagine they just closed early that day and didn't reopen, but that's just guesswork on my part based on like experience in the food industry. But yeah, apparently he put on an apron and he either served fries to people, but there was a closed off event. So I have no difficulty believing that Donald Trump was the one who both fried them and served them to people, because they're not actually servicing customers. You need two different people doing those things if you have, 20 cars in the drive-thru. But if you have 3,
I mean,
then you can take your time.
I don't know how hard it is to fry fries, but like I would think it would be dumping a bag of like something into like a container and then pushing down and then letting it sit for so many minutes.
That's exactly what it is.
And then pushing it back up and then dumping the fries into the...
You have a still basket.
Yeah, whatever the basket is to hold the fries, that then you like use to somehow get the fries into the little cups that they have.
Yep, the bags come in a big plastic, a big brown paper bag.
Okay.
You rip it open, you dump them in like 3/4 full or half
They're
full.
like probably cut already and everything.
Yeah, it's already cut.
Yeah.
And then you just dump them in the grease, and then you hit the button that says fries.
Right.
And I think it fries them for 3 minutes, but like,
you don't even have to lift them up. It pops up automatically, doesn't it?
No, you have to lift them up.
Oh, you do? Okay.
But this was like 20 years ago that I fried French fries at McDonald's, so I don't remember the exact time.
I bet you it's on a timer now.
It was on a timer then, but you still have to take it out of the grease when the timer goes off. So when you press that fries button, it starts a timer for 3 minutes. Yep. And after 3 minutes, you have to go over there, lift the basket up, and you set it on the thing there so that the grease drips off of them. And after 30 seconds or so, you dump them into big...
I can see that being something that just happens automatically. Like it just gets lifted up automatically by some mechanism to automate.
Yeah, but McDonald's isn't going to put the money into that.
You would think they would, though. They're all about efficiency and reducing their employee count and things of that nature to save money.
Maybe, but I don't think anything like that exists.
Okay.
But anyway, then you dump it into the big barrel thing. It's not even a barrel. It's just a big steel thing with the heat lamps on them. And you dump some amount of salt on them. Excessive amounts of salt, really.
Definitely.
And then the person working the counter, if someone else usually makes the hamburgers and stuff that they ordered, they put that there on the counter, and the person at the front takes the hamburgers and they put them in the bag, and then they take the little containers, the little plastic, the cardboard cups, they scoop the fries into them, drop them in, and good to go. And it's tedious and it's exhausting, and I would never want to work at a McDonald's again. I only worked at a McDonald's for like 5 days because it was miserable and it's exhausting, and it never stops. There's never a point, probably because this was in Mississippi in a small little town of, I think, 6,000 to 10,000 people, a very small town, way smaller than Keene. And the McDonald's just never stopped. It wasn't as bad as a dinner rush, but there was always a line of cars in the drive-thru. So there was never a moment where you could just chill. You always had to be making food for people.
I've worked menial jobs before, well, to some degree, and I have to say I could, like, at least they were easy. Like, I worked as a cashier at one point for a little while. But that was easy. Most of the time I just sat around doing nothing. Like, it's like every once in a while somebody would come to the store, you have to do it with a return or something like that. But nothing like constant people coming through. Yeah.
That was why I couldn't do McDonald's. I still work in food service, and I like it because you cultivate a lot of powerful relationships with people in food service. It's not quite like it's not like these are soldiers and you're in a combat together, so you become closer and friendlier and like camaraderie. But it has the same psychological effect where the people that you go through these horrific experiences, because working retail and working food services, not gonna lie, they are horrible experiences. You are dealing with some of the worst of humanity.
Oh yeah,
all the time.
Definitely customer service in particular. If you're doing customer service,
I'm very happy to not be the one dealing with customers. And if I'm dealing with a customer at this point, it's because they're out of control and they're irate, and I have to kick them off the premises.
I have to say, like, there's particularly like a certain segment of especially elderly people who are just impossible to deal with.
Yeah.
Literally impossible.
And they exist in IT as well. They're the types of... My icon was to the left a little bit.
Yeah, oh my God. Like, these, you have no idea. Like, try thinking about trying to communicate with somebody with Alzheimer's and wanting to buy, like, even just something simple like a pen. And then think about it taking like 3 hours and you having to pull out like each of the individual pens and then them trying to ask questions about it. Like really insane amounts of time, and then like asking questions or demanding stuff that wasn't even possible. Like, you have no idea until you work customer service how awful people are, and how difficult.
And I don't want to bag on the old people too much here, because I've noticed.
I'm not bagging on the old people.
I know.
I'm bagging on the people with Alzheimer's, which is really terrible. But yeah.
I honestly think I would take the older people, the older women at least. The old men, they have their own different issues.
I don't care if they're old, but if they have Alzheimer's and they are unable to communicate, that's the part that's really hard.
Sure, but most people...
And they don't want to stop talking to you.
Most people out there don't have Alzheimer's, so...
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not saying Alzheimer's necessarily specifically, but Alzheimer's like type of symptoms. Like, you'll know it when you're talking to these people.
But there's plenty of entitled, arrogant people out there who think that you exist to serve them and for no other reason. And they don't have any ability to comprehend that you are a human being.
Or comprehend the time that you are that they are wasting.
Oh, good Lord, yes.
Yes. That's that in particular. It's like, okay, I can deal with you. You know, I understand you have Alzheimer's. I understand you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, in terms of like describing, like, if you can't describe a pen, that you want to buy a pen, right? And we're having an hour-long conversation about what this is that you're trying to come up with. And then we finally figure it out. All right. And then, we sell you the pen. I don't want to be talking on the phone with you for another 2 or 3 hours, or in the store with you for 2 or 3 more hours.
Well, plus there's no pen that you could sell them at that point that is going to make it worth your time.
Exactly.
That you've spent with them.
Exactly the problem.
Like, even if it's coated in diamonds, unless it's like a $5,000 pen, it's like you're losing money.
It'll be the cheapest pen you could possibly buy too.
Yeah, it'll be that 35 cents each pick or whatever.
Yeah, it'll be on sale.
But Zoomers, younger generations, are so much more entitled than the older people that I have to deal with.
Yeah, they are. That's true too.
603-283-6160. If you want to share your experiences in customer service, Free Talk Live.
Today's most popular video games take place in dangerous post-apocalyptic landscapes. But are these games doing enough to prepare our kids for the actual post-apocalyptic future we will all soon face?
I think these games are quite effective at teaching our kids skills like finding shotgun ammo and leading elite squads of super soldiers.
But these aren't the advanced skills that they're going to need. They're going to need the more practical skills like how to find drinking water by collecting the morning dew in human skulls.
Or how to deal with depression when the sun is blocked out for 500 years by a cloud of radioactive dust.
Absolutely. Now, that's the type of knowledge these kids are going to need when their world has been turned into a brutal hellscape.
But these kids said that they know how to find items to barter at weapon shops and how to use medicine packs to heal zombie bites.
The games make it all seem deceptively simple. I mean, in the future, a kid's not going to be able to kill a 6-foot-long irradiated beetle just by pressing a few buttons, and he's going to have to get down there with an axe and hack and hack and hack.
This is the Onion News Network.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. US Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are virtually neck and neck across the 7 battleground states, with just 2 weeks left of campaigning before the 2024 presidential election, according to a new poll. A Washington Post Shah School poll of more than 5,000 registered voters taken during the first half of October found both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump with 47% support among those who said they will definitely or probably cast a ballot. Among likely voters, the vice president leads in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, while Trump enjoys advantages in Arizona and North Carolina. They're tied with 48% support in Nevada. The survey has a margin of error of 1.7 percentage points. Sean Diddy Combs is facing 7 new lawsuits, including allegations that he raped a minor. The music mogul already faces criminal sex trafficking and racketeering charges in the US. He's denied the allegations, with his lawyers saying in court the truth will prevail. Sally Patterson reports from New York.
Sean Combs is accused of rape and sexual assault in New York, Los Angeles and Las Vegas. The plaintiffs are both men and women. One says she was 13 when she was allegedly raped at a music awards after party. Several of the allegations involve drugs and alcohol. In a statement, Combs' lawyers say he's never sexually assaulted anyone, adult or minor, man or woman. He's currently being held in a Brooklyn jail over separate criminal charges. Prosecutors accuse the rapper of creating a criminal enterprise. Combs has denied any criminal wrongdoing.
Death row inmate Robert Roberson will not testify in a hearing on Monday after a bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers took unprecedented measures to subpoena him to save him from execution last week. Many believe Roberson is innocent and that his conviction of shaking his 2-year-old daughter Nikki to death hinges on, quote, junk science. Tony Waterman reports from Texas.
Roberson was meant to testify via video, but officials said his autism and years of solitary confinement made him ill-suited for video conferencing. Among those who did testify was TV personality Dr. Phil McGraw, who said he was 100% convinced that Roberson was facing a miscarriage of justice, saying his conviction hinges on outdated science. There is evidence Nikki may have died from undiagnosed pneumonia. The unprecedented subpoena has now kicked off a legal battle that will push Roberson's execution back at least 3 months.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join us 603-283-6160 if you would like to weigh in. That's 603-283-6160. With you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And not your keys, not your Bitcoin. That's an important lesson that people need to learn before it's too late, before you lose your cryptocurrency in a wallet that you don't control, like with Coinbase or Kraken or any of these other custodial wallets. Yeah, I did write hardware here. I meant hard way. I didn't even notice that. It's a lesson that people have had to learn the hard way. Keep your wallet in your hands. Don't use one of these wallets that other people control. So, and the best way to do that, in my opinion, I don't necessarily want to say it's the best way because that's not entirely true, but it is a unique way of doing that, and that's with the Edge wallet. You can find it on the Google Play Store, the iOS Store, and you can find it directly at edge.app if you'd like to download and install it that way. It has a unique feature of allowing you to log into your wallet using a username and password. And this allows you to have your wallet easily synchronized across multiple devices, which you can do with like the Exodus wallet and Coinami by, using recovery phrases and all of that stuff. You can do all of that with those as well. But with Edge wallets, all you need is your username and password in order to be able to do that. And this was beautiful here in Keene, New Hampshire, when crypto use was at its height here. And there were a lot of homeless people here who used cryptocurrency, especially at Corner News, to buy their cigarettes and stuff. And I don't remember how they acquired the cryptocurrency, but they had it. And they would go into like Corner News and ask to borrow the employee's phone. And the employee would have Edge wallet installed on their phone, and they would log into their Edge account. The homeless person would log into their Edge wallet account on the employee's phone and then use that to make a purchase. And that is such a beautiful thing that would not be facilitated by any other wallet on the planet. Edge wallet literally allowed homeless people to make purchases using other people's cell phones with their permission, obviously. And that's something that I don't think any other wallet has ever made possible. And obviously that's not like the goal of Edge wallet. They probably don't even know that happened. However, I was there. I watched it happen, and it was extraordinary. And that's one of the best features of Edge wallet is that it allows you to control your keys. You actually have control over your cryptocurrency, and it has this unique login system that allows you to access your wallet on multiple devices. Now, there are some security features these days where that would be slightly less effective, because if you log in on an entirely new device that you've never logged into before, it's going to require you to authenticate that login on an existing known device, or you have to wait, I think, a 7-day period and then log in again before it will actually approve it because, new IP address and all that stuff. But that's just a security feature that, honestly, it helps you protect yourself from thieves, and it helps keep you from being vulnerable. And Edge Wallet facilitates that, and a lot of other really amazing features. The Edge Wallet added the AnyPay protocol to it several years ago. It's not an open source project, but you can add to it or some.
They actually did release a source code.
They did. I was going to say, you know more about this particular thing than I do.
Yeah, it would be free software or open source. Mm-hmm.
It is open source.
Yeah, you can get a complete set of source code and run your own server if you want.
Extraordinary. More reasons to respect Edge Wallet and what they're doing over at edge.app.
I'm sorry. Are we talking about AnyPay or are we talking about Edge?
Edge.
Oh, I'm sorry. So both. It's okay. So you can do that with AnyPay. Edge Wallet, there is source code for it too.
Okay.
But yeah.
But I know several years ago,
there's keys to access certain services relating to Edge that they don't provide.
Okay.
So
their login servers, presumably.
Yeah, so there's a cloud component where your private key is uploaded to their servers, but obviously you need your own password to decrypt it. So.
And you can get your hardware keys and export them to a different wallet, just so people out there know that, right?
Yes.
They're completely your hardware keys. So if you want to go through that process, you can, get your hardware keys and install them and use them for the Konami wallet.
Private keys.
What did I say? Public?
Hardware keys.
Oh, yeah, I meant private keys. Sorry. But yes, you're not limited to just the Edge wallet. They are truly your keys. You can learn more about it at edge.app, and that features a link at the top for those who wish to learn more about crypto and wallets. There are videos there where they can teach you the basics of cryptocurrency, the value of wallets, and why all of this is important. We want to say thank you to Edge for sponsoring Free Talk Live for $1,500 a month or thereabouts. It's paid in Bitcoin, so I don't know the exact amount in Bitcoin that is being paid because I haven't looked. And I know that because it's a sponsorship and because we're under different FCC regulations now than we were back when we were selling advertisements rather than sponsorships, that we have to specify the amount. So I don't want to be misleading. They did not give us $1,500. they gave us Bitcoin that at that time was the equivalent of $1,500 US. So I don't know if that even needs to be said, but like, I know the federal government is watching me because they like released me from their custody about 5 months ago, and I don't want to unnecessarily land myself in trouble. So check out that again at edge.app. That's edge.app. Excellent wallet, and probably the one that I use most day to day. It used to be Coinami, but in addition to their missteps where they were allowing people to, when you tried to recover your wallet or when you set up your wallet on the Coinami desktop version, it would send those words to Google to be spell checked. And it did this over clear text. And at least there were rumors that people lost their crypto as a result of that. Basically, if you don't understand what I just said, they were basically taking your recovery keys, the access to your cryptocurrency wallets, and they were handing it over to Google, then like just standing on a street corner shouting those 12 words for anyone to hear effectively. And like some people may have heard those words and knew what they were and used them to steal people's crypto. That's the rumor. We don't know whether or not that actually ever happened, but there were Reddit posts of people saying, hey, look, I lost my crypto here, and this seems to be why.
Yeah, from my understanding, there was a handful of people that this happened, like that the situation was such where the vulnerability was actually exploited, is what you would say. And I don't know exactly like under what the circumstances were, because you would, I mean, generally speaking, like, unless it's like an ISP or maybe a Wi-Fi, like maybe a coffee shop or something like that, somebody shouldn't be able to see that still, even if it's in the clear text. But if you're on a coffee shop over an unencrypted Wi-Fi connection, that is the exception to that, where they would be able to see it in this case.
Well, for all I know, there is some place that you can go to on Google to see what the most recent things people have been sent there to be spell checked are.
Oh, so they didn't even need it to like sniff the traffic at a coffee shop.
I don't know that they would need to or that they wouldn't need to. I know that Google does provide a lot of information like that.
If Google's providing that,
I don't know that they are.
Oh, well, I'm just saying if they are, then.
But they very well could be, because that wouldn't be out of line for Google to like, hey, look, these are the words that people are spell checking now.
That seems like a really bad idea. To like get that, like publicize that information, like what words people are spell checking.
I wouldn't be surprised though, because Google does some shady stuff.
What blows my mind is that this is even being done using an API to like some server, as opposed to being just done on the phone. Like you could have a spell checker built into the device that doesn't have an internet connection. So like the fact that it's sending off like that in of itself is kind of concerning to me.
Those frequently have their own security issues though, because like they won't allow you to use your normal input keyboard in this manner. They give you a specialized keyboard within that app, because your normal keyboard that you use, like your Swipe keyboard or your Google keyboard or your Apple keyboard or whatever you've installed, Swift key or whatever, it's recording all the text that you enter as well. It is also spell checking it, and it's probably sending every word you enter off to some server somewhere to, more accurately predict what words you're going to use next. I know that Swift Keys does that. And so does the Google keyboard.
Insane to me. Like
I think it's called Gboard.
It shouldn't even need to send it to a server, even because that's something that is statistically calculatable. And it's like I've literally written applications to do this very thing.
But they do that.
Yeah, like but you don't need to. Like there's no
Google
point.
Keyboard,
there's no reason other than for some benefit to Google for them to send that data off to it, as opposed to just doing it on the phone itself or the computing device.
But if Edge Wallet or Konami or whatever allowed you to use your Google keyboard, then Google ends up with your private keys.
Yikes.
And you don't want that. So they have their own little keyboard programmed into it that you end up using, and it spell checks that somehow. And I don't know how all of that works, but I know that at one point Konami allegedly was just sending that information out to Google.
Yikes.
But that wasn't even the reason I stopped using them. I stopped using them much more recently, like in the last 2 months or so, because the wallet just doesn't work. Every time I tried to send cryptocurrency to pay someone for doing the show or for Free Talk Cast or whatever.
I believe, wasn't Koinomi the one that was like they used to have source code and then they closed it up or something?
I don't know.
I think they might have been. And that was like, so like there's a lot of things that they've done, I think, if I have the right wallet here, that was like, what are you guys doing? like it's just like, Yeah.
Many wallets have come and gone throughout the years. Once upon a time, the Jaxx wallet was actually my favorite. That's JAXX.
Yeah, that was pretty bloated, that one.
I'm sorry?
The Jaxx wallet was pretty bloated, if I recall.
I don't even know if it still exists. It
was slow and bloated.
It was popular around the time before Bitcoin Cash came into existence. And Bitcoin Cash really marked Jaxx's downfall because I don't know that they ever added support for Bitcoin Cash. Now, this was a fork in the Bitcoin blockchain that created two different cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, or Bitcoin Core and Bitcoin Cash, however you want to call it, right? And the result of that was that all of the Bitcoin you suddenly had that same amount of Bitcoin Cash. However, the Jaxx wallet was very, very slow to add a Bitcoin Cash implementation to its wallet. So after like 6 to 8 months of people waiting, they had enough. They wanted to sell their Bitcoin Cash when it was still worth a lot of money, or to move it or trade it or whatever. Because when this split first happened, Bitcoin Cash was worth like $2,000, $3,000 per.
Yeah.
And like now it's what,
$200?
Yeah,
I guess.
But at that time, it was a fair bit more valuable than it is now, and it was pretty close to the value of Bitcoin then, because Bitcoin itself around that time was $5,000 or $6,000.
It was substantially less than Bitcoin still at the time in the early days.
Not as much as it would be now.
Not as much as it would be now, but in the early days it was worth much more by comparison.
Yeah, it was probably worth like half as much as Bitcoin Core or something, but the margin was much closer because Bitcoin.
I don't even think it was half of it, but.
Well, Bitcoin Bitcoin at the time that Bitcoin Cash came out was only like $5,000 or $6,000 each, and Bitcoin Cash peaked at like $2,500.
I remember it was substantially. It was just a fraction of what Bitcoin was worth still, even though it was worth way more then than it is now.
Well, I don't have time to Google that, but
I'll take a look and tell you what
it was. Definitely,
I can tell you what it's worth, like Bitcoin Cash right now, but.
Well, yeah, but I'm more curious what it was worth relative to Bitcoin at the time of the happening, because that was what caused Jaxx to lose out on its market share in the first place, because it didn't provide access to Bitcoin Cash, as so many other wallets did. Anyway, so wallets have come and gone. Edge has been around for a very long time, and we're not still doing the Edge sponsorship at this moment. We're just talking about hardware and wallets in general. So Edge has been around for a very long time, and I've been using it for a very long time. I would definitely recommend it for anyone who's looking for a solution to having their crypto wallets. Exodus is also a really good wallet that I would recommend. Also compatible with multiple platforms, so you can have it on Android, you can have it on PC, or Windows rather.
Bitcoin Cash is going for $360.29 versus Bitcoin today is at $66,944.
Yeah, that's today.
So just to give you an idea, and it wasn't.
Yeah, that's a $60,000
difference.
That's
a huge difference there, but it definitely was not that in the early days of the split. I'll see if I can find that in a second here.
Yeah, so Bitcoin Cash, it's so much more usable than Bitcoin, but it lost the branding war. And because of that, Bitcoin Cash has just kind of never really recovered. And that's really unfortunate, because Bitcoin Cash is actually usable as currency, and Bitcoin has more or less been co-opted by banking interests and government interests. Very recently, there was a paper released by one of the central banks in the United States, one of the Federal Reserve branches, attacking Bitcoin. And I got an article about that, but I ended up misplacing it. And I don't want to get into it anyway, because I want to go back to Donald Trump serving French fries. But some people obviously were not happy about this, and the article from CNN here just talks about franchising, and that's not really very interesting. I have a related article here, though, from Arizona Central, that's azcentral.com, that begins, Trump went to McDonald's and fried Kamala Harris's campaign to a crisp. Now, that's not my take of what happened. It had reached the point where no one could break through. Very hyperbolic writing here from whoever this is, from Phil Boas of the Arizona Republic. The presidential election had turned into a blur of cannon fire, with each side shooting so many broadsides that nothing made sense. Nothing was discernible. That's not entirely true, and that's not my take on this at all. As I was saying earlier, Donald Trump has always been a bad speaker. He's always sounded borderline incoherent, and he's always said things that don't make a lot of sense. Now, there's a video of him that's circulating again recently when one of the hurricanes hit. I think it was the one in New Jersey, maybe it was the one in Dallas, but he said something to the effect of, while standing on the White House lawn, This is the wettest one we've ever seen from the standpoint of water. And he said this about a hurricane, and that's such a nonsensical thing to say. This is the wettest one we've ever seen from the standpoint of water, was Donald Trump's description of this particular hurricane. So he's never been particularly eloquent or sensible, but he did okay next to Joe Biden, because Joe Biden would then talk about how Corn Pop was a bad dude. However, when you take that away and you put Donald Trump next to someone who can speak in coherent sentences and who doesn't sound like a senile dementia patient who is pooping her pants, then suddenly Donald Trump looks way less competent. And this is sort of, it's easy for Donald Trump to seem like the sane, rational person in the room when it's him and Joe Biden. But when it's him and a normal person, then suddenly it's a little more obvious when it wouldn't have been a big deal if he was still running against Joe Biden when he said, in Springfield, they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the pets, right? Which he did. He said that during the debate. Against Joe Biden, that wouldn't have even made a drop in the bucket. No one would have even noticed that, because Joe Biden would have said something completely crazy immediately after that. Like, he would have gone into a story about his dog when he was a child and how that taught him about roaches and how kids love stretching rubbing his leg hair. So when you take that away, you're just left with Donald Trump standing there saying things that are, look, if your grandpa comes up to you and he's like, hey, did you know in Springfield, the immigrants, they're eating the cats and dogs? They're eating the pets of the people who live there? Did you know that? I saw this on the internet. I saw the video of this on the internet. And by the way, I want to go to McDonald's and I want to work as a fry cook and I want to serve people some French fries. You'd be like, Grandpa, it's time to put you in a home. You've lost it. You're out there. You've lost your mind. And I think that is acceptable against Joe Biden. I want to say acceptable. That's less obvious when you stack him against Joe Biden, because Joe Biden so obviously is crazier and more senile that it makes Donald Trump look saner in comparison. You don't get that when you have Kamala Harris, who makes Donald Trump just look like Donald Trump. And that's not good for him. So that's not my take. This guy at Arizona Central has a completely different take, where he thinks that both of them are just blasting each other left and right. And maybe they are. I don't know. But I didn't think it looked very good for Donald Trump. I thought it looked pretty good for Kamala Harris. And people were looking around going, wow, okay, so this is what Joe Biden looked like for the last 4 years. Now I get it. Because
I mean, but when you listen to, the problem is, I think when you listen to Trump, you don't expect him to be like serious, right? Like, he just makes a joke out of everything, right? Like does anybody actually think that he thinks that they're eating the cats and the dogs and things? Like, I mean, there's like a ever slight hint of truth in that. Like, some cultures do that, but like I don't think he's like serious about that. Like, do you?
I believe that Donald Trump believes that he saw a video proving that Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio are eating people's dogs and cats.
Really? You don't think he's just totally making it up?
No, I don't, because like I have I'm familiar with senile old people who happen to be Republicans, like my dad, who's dead, and his dad, who is also dead. And I have no doubt whatsoever that if Fox News told them that in Springfield they were eating the dogs and the cats, or if they watched it in a Yahoo video or just saw it on YouTube, I have no doubt, because this is already confirming their own biases. They already believe that the Koreans eat people's dogs or whatever. They already believe that they're doing this sort of thing.
Wait, isn't that true?
They don't come to America and eat people's dogs, generally speaking.
Well, not like pets maybe, but it is.
But yes,
I feel like that is a cultural thing in Korea. Somebody could correct me if I might be wrong here, but I know that there's like in that part of the world, I'm pretty sure that there's at least certain cultures, and I thought Korea was South Korea.
It is.
Korea was one of them.
Horses as well. They eat horses and they eat dogs.
Okay.
So I mean, these things do happen, right? But they don't.
Well, this goes back to the problem. There's a slight bit of truth to it in a very generalized.
Well, they don't
sense.
come to America and then start kidnapping dogs and cats and eating them.
I feel like he got the group wrong, but like, and he's sort of just making a statement, and then they're like going with it.
Well, Springfield, Ohio does apparently have a pretty large Haitian community, so he got the group right.
But do the Haitians? I was under the impression that Haitians do not actually eat cats or dogs, and
I don't know if they do or not, but like the vast majority.
So that was totally wrong.
But the vast majority of like old white Republicans, if you told them Haitians eat dogs and cats,
it definitely
they would just believe it.
Yeah.
They would believe it immediately.
I think you're certainly right about that. They would just eat that one up right away.
Yeah.
And assume it's true because it fits their biases.
And they're already anti-immigrant. They already don't like brown people.
Yep.
They'll never say that, but yeah, they already don't like brown people. They don't like them coming here and foreigners.
Oh
they
yeah,
like
definitely.
So this idea that foreigners are coming here.
I want to back up though and say I don't think the Democrats are any better on this subject.
They're certainly not.
They're just better at not saying what they think for political advantage, and then trying to get their vote.
Right.
So yeah.
So it plays into all of the biases that they already have. So I have no difficulty believing that Donald Trump actually believes that is happening, because I know that my grandfather would believe it. My dad would have believed it.
Yeah.
My grandmother is more sensible than that, and I don't think she would believe it. But a lot of these old white Republicans who watch Fox News all the time, if you told them that the Haitians were coming in and eating people's cats and dogs, they'd be like, "Oh, I know those foreigners. This is why we got to close the borders. This is why we should never have let Joe Biden implement his open border policy," right? Because it's just confirming people's biases.
Yeah.
So then Donald Trump went to McDonald's, and boom, the roar was deafening. For a moment, the smoke cleared, the sea stilled, and you could hear the timber start to split. The main mast of the Democratic Party was falling. Now, this guy, he has really drank the Kool-Aid here. I don't think that Donald Trump serving French fries at McDonald's makes or breaks anyone's presidential election. I think it's funny, and I really want to watch this video of Donald Trump in an apron frying French fries, freedom fries. Sorry, I keep doing that. They're clearly, when a Republican presidential candidate is frying them, they're obviously freedom fries and not French fries. And what will go down as the greatest troll in U.S. presidential politics, Donald Trump put on an apron, scooped up some fries, and blew a hole in the HMS Harris Waltz. Now, that is certainly not the greatest troll in U.S. presidential politics. Like
what would be the greatest troll in U.S. politics? Because I don't think of them as presidential candidates usually as trolling each other, other than like attacking each other for sure, but trolling?
I don't know. Now, if I'm interested to see why he thinks this is a troll.
Yeah, okay.
And I suspect it's going to be something to do with Kamala claiming to have worked fast food at some point in her life.
Okay.
But even then, like there's certainly been better trolls. If that is the reason, then
I'm not saying it's a great troll, but I feel like it's probably more of a troll than it's at least got that hint of trolling, right?
I agree. If that was his motivation, then it's definitely a troll, and a good one. It's not bad, but it's certainly not the greatest in the history of U.S. politics.
When they were talking about this, it was hilarious, right? Like behind the scenes and working out the troll, right? But I think in practice, when it comes out, it's a troll, but it's not. It may not be as good as certainly other trolls from random people on the internet.
So coming up, why does this guy think that Donald Trump is trolling Kamala Harris? And I have to admit, like, if a good move for Donald Trump would be to start trolling the Democratic presidential candidates. Like that would be a good way to go about campaigning. There's more coming up here, though. It is Free Talk Live.
The Shire Free Church offers a sanctuary to those seeking an escape from state churches.
The Shire Free Church is an interfaith, diverse group of people that may not share identical theological beliefs.
As a member in or minister of the Shire Free Church, you are a sovereign individual and may be the faith of your choice.
We don't claim to have all of the answers.
We are open to all peaceful people.
We want to learn from each other.
What unifies the Shire Free Church and its diverse members is peace,
love,
and liberty. There are many paths to God, one for every individual.
The Shire Free Church does not define a specific path beyond these parameters that must be your foundation.
Peace as your way.
Love as your guide.
And liberty as your light.
Learn more at church.shiresociety.com.
That's church.shiresociety.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. US Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are virtually neck and neck across the 7 battleground states, with just 2 weeks left of campaigning before the 2024 presidential election, according to a new poll. A Washington Post Shah School poll of more than 5,000 registered voters taken during the first half of October found both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump with 47% support among those who said they will definitely or probably cast a ballot. Among likely voters, the vice president leads in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, while Trump enjoys advantages in Arizona and North Carolina. They're tied with 48% support in Nevada. The survey has a margin of error of 1.7 percentage points. Sean Diddy Combs is facing 7 new lawsuits, including allegations that he raped a minor. The music mogul already faces criminal sex trafficking and racketeering charges in the US. He's denied the allegations, with his lawyers saying in court the truth will prevail. Sally Patterson reports from New York.
Sean Combs is accused of rape and sexual assault in New York, Los Angeles and Las Vegas. The plaintiffs are both men and women. One says she was 13 when she was allegedly raped at a music awards after party. Several of the allegations involve drugs and alcohol. In a statement, Combs' lawyers say he's never sexually assaulted anyone, adult or minor, man or woman. He's currently being held in a Brooklyn jail over separate criminal charges. Prosecutors accuse the rapper of creating a criminal enterprise. Combs has denied any criminal wrongdoing.
Death row inmate Robert Roberson will not testify in a hearing on Monday after a bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers took unprecedented measures to subpoena him to save him from execution last week. Many believe Roberson is innocent and that his conviction of shaking his 2-year-old daughter Nikki to death hinges on, quote, junk science. Tony Waterman reports from Texas.
Roberson was meant to testify via video, but officials said his autism and years of solitary confinement made him ill-suited for video conferencing. Among those who did testify was TV personality Dr. Phil McGraw, who said he was 100% convinced that Roberson was facing a miscarriage of justice, saying his conviction hinges on outdated science. There is evidence Nikki may have died from undiagnosed pneumonia. The unprecedented subpoena has now kicked off a legal battle that will push Roberson's execution back at least 3 months.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, with more today on the burgeoning diplomatic crisis between India and Canada, following the killing of a Sikh cleric in British Columbia last year, and fresh allegations by Canada that India has been plotting to murder Sikh leaders on Canadian soil. The issue erupted anew last week when Canada expelled 6 diplomats, and India furiously denied any involvement in any kind of plot, demanding that the Canadian authorities provide evidence to support their allegations. Carla Ann Robbins is with America's Council on Foreign Relations.
We know that Russians go around murdering their opponents overseas. Certainly we know the famous case of Jamal Khashoggi from the Saudis. We really don't expect this from a sort of democracy like India. These diplomats are accused of being part of a broad criminal network to harass Canadian Sikhs. And they say they're tied to this murder in June of Sikh separatist leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar. So this has become a really, really high profile face-off between the Indian and Canadian governments.
Meanwhile, the United States is backing Canada's claims and is urging India to cooperate fully with the investigation launched by America's northern neighbour. The row has plunged Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's relationship with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi into the deep freeze and could soon have implications for the US-India relationship as well. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
Our main news again. US Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are virtually neck and neck across the 7 battleground states. Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs is facing 7 new lawsuits. And death row inmate Robert Roberson will not testify after a bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers took unprecedented measures to subpoena him to save him from execution last week. And that's the latest feature story news. Kate Fisher reporting.
Despite being objectively awful people, newly engaged couple Ross Bird and Jessica Black want their upcoming wedding to really reflect their personalities.
We're pulling out all the stops to have a kind of wedding that just screams us.
Yeah.
We're going to have a bluegrass band playing 80s pop songs. Because Ross loves bluegrass, but I love 80s music.
And then at the end of the ceremony, this is great, we're going to pass out sparklers to all the guests.
Sources claim that a bunch of candles in mason jars and an Instagram photo booth will truly capture the essence of the insufferable pair.
We didn't want some big, stuffy ceremony. It should feel more like a fun dance party for our friends.
Because the night's about us, yes, but I mean, it's also, about the people who make us, us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And those people love us exactly for our uniqueness.
Sources hoped with every fiber of their being that these two would be divorced within a year.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join us 603-283-6160 if you want to weigh in. Again, the number is 603-283-6160. And with you in the studio tonight, it's Aria.
And Mr. Penguin.
And apparently, Commander in Beef went a New York Post headline. Trump works fry cooker at McDonald's and MAGA faithful line up to order. I'll take whatever he gives me, they say. So I don't know what they think was going on, but apparently Trump supporters were able, after being screened, of course, to come through and order fries, and they ordered, I'll take whatever he gives me. Like, how obsessed with this hero worship nonsense do you have to be to just eat whatever Donald Trump gives you? Like, that's crazy.
And that just seems so weird of a way to phrase it too.
Yeah.
Like,
but I believe it of these people. They do engage in hero worship of presidential candidates. Like, Donald Trump is their hero, and he could spit in their burger and they would happily eat it. They would be grateful that Donald Trump had shared part of himself with them.
98% of the population, yeah.
Yep. And the others would do the same for Kamala Harris.
Yep.
And I don't understand it. If I go to a McDonald's, and not that I ever really go to McDonald's, but if I did, I would know what I wanted, and I would order that. I wouldn't say, oh my goodness, I will take whatever, insert politician here is willing to give me. That's crazy.
The funny thing is, like, actually seeing like a presidential candidate isn't that big of a deal. It's something that happens like fairly often because during these campaigns, they travel all over the place. The number of times that like I've had the opportunity, and I'm putting that in quotes here, to greet a president has been numerous, or a presidential candidate.
They especially here in Keene, New Hampshire, they come here every time they're campaigning.
Yeah. I mean, even in like more rural areas. I know, like, when I went to college, okay, so some of this helps that it was a college town, I suppose. I know there were presidential candidates that, would go there during their tour, and that's commonly where they'll go. They'll go to colleges and things of that nature. But the point that I'm making is simply that these politicians, they do show their face quite a bit when they're campaigning.
Yep.
So you really are not, if you really want to go see a presidential candidate, you will probably have a couple of opportunities at least at some point. Give it enough time.
But why someone would want to see a presidential candidate, I don't know. However, we do have someone on the line who might know the answer to that. We have Sarah on the line from New Mexico. Sarah, do you know why a person would want to see a presidential candidate and like shake their hand and talk to them?
Well, I mean, that's not that important to me. It's just that whether you vote them in or not. And in the state of New Mexico, our state.
I'm going to let you get. I'm going to let you get to that, Sarah. But I'm curious. Like, if you could meet Kamala Harris and shake her hand, would that not make you happy?
That's not really that important. Is that I helped her get elected? That's more because she's supposed to represent the people. What these presidents, they're not kings and queens that you can't. They're like in England where it's done by the blood lineage, and they don't earn any of your votes. They don't earn anything. They just get what do you call that? They're just born into it, and that's why America, we broke away from that. It's a representative government. They got 8 terms at the limit, and they're out. And then people vote. Suppose we vote to elect people that we want.
Sarah, you know that England also has a parliament and a prime minister, right? And that the Queen in England doesn't really have any power?
I don't know about whether she has much power, but look at the loyal. Aren't they worth like $10 billion? The royal family. I mean, do they deserve all that?
I will give her that there is a lot of hero worship of the Queen and King in England. So it's
the English treat the Queen and the royal family in exactly the same way that Americans treat the military.
That's probably a true statement.
And I don't remember where I first saw that, but it was like an American asking, I don't understand why you English people care so much about the royal family. And they're like, well, look, we love them the same way that you love your military. I was like, oh my God, that's exactly it. No, but the average American does.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, but that's kind of like an idol worship. But there was a lot of British people that wanted to end that parliament because these people don't work really. They just get everything handed to them, and then they got all these powers or whatever.
Are you talking about Parliament, or you said Parliament?
She meant royal family.
You meant the royal family. They want to end the royal family, and you don't mean kill them. You mean end their reign, so to speak. So there's no more queen and king.
But if we could, march them to the guillotine, Sarah. If we could march them to the guillotines and redistribute their wealth, would you be okay with that?
Oh boy.
Well, it's people. You know what? It provokes people into that kind of thing. It's because like the greediness of people that had the Ozempic or the Wegovy, they like, we don't want to lower the profit. I'm the one that invented it. I'm entitled to all this capitalism. People are dying. If this kind of that greed, it provokes people into revolution where they become violent. You know what I mean? When people are in need and they refuse to share their wealth and they refuse to help other people.
Right. So Sarah, if we could take those billionaires like the royal family and Elon Musk and like presumably like some others, like some of these dragons, basically these billionaires, and we could behead them and take their money, would you be like, yeah, let's do that?
Well, something, I'm not really into violence. I don't know if that's necessary, but it gets to the point where people are starving and freezing and dying.
Let me just ask you this. If we get rid of the guillotine, would you take their money?
Sarah?
Well, I as a communist, I hope that they would voluntarily share the wealth, supposedly, but it doesn't come out like that. They shared because people got violent and they killed them. You know what I mean?
Are you the same Sarah from New Mexico who said that you were okay with the death penalty, even though it meant some innocent people would die? And you're really going to sit here and say that you're not okay with violence?
Well, something, I really called about our New Mexico election here.
I know, we're going to get into that, but like the more overarching concern here for me is that like I distinctly remember having a discussion with you where we pointed out that if you have a death penalty, some people will be sentenced to death even though they were innocent, and you were like, well, yeah, but that's okay, it's going to happen. And now you're saying that you don't support violence.
I would still like the death penalty, even if they did a little bit more, like, better screening. I really don't want innocent people to death, but
it's going to happen. If there's a death penalty, it will happen with 100% certainty. Innocent people will be put to death.
Right, but I'm just hoping that we could put that into a minor percentage, so that
is it 0.0? Is that okay with you that kill people that are innocent?
But you know what? What about all the real murderers that have killed people?
Do you know the number one murderer in the world is the government? And especially the U.S. government. The number of people the U.S. government has killed by bombing other countries is like staggering. There were over 1 million people that the U.S. government killed in Iraq and Afghanistan that were women and children. We're not even talking about like people who were like, oh, they might be guilty of a crime. We're talking about completely, utterly innocent people.
Well, I don't know about that. That's like political. I'm talking about people that shoot like taxi cab drivers like 2:00 in the morning in big cities. Those kind of people, if they get, those are the people that, or shoot the Circle K clerks. They've done a lot of that. Like, I think there was 1 year in Texas where they shot like 50 of them in 1 year.
There's very few serial killers. Serial killers here in the U.S., okay? Or anywhere, really. So the question I have for you then is, if it's okay to punish people for murder, right? What do you propose we do about all the murderers in government and their conspirators? How should we punish them? Like people in the military or politicians, or the people who enact the laws.
Well, one thing is that you could vote them out. But you guys don't believe in voting. See what I mean? You just let everybody else decide for you and then just fuck up whatever.
Oh, Sarah, you can't say that. Wow. She's never done that before. But yeah, she just said a bad word. So
that is not a word I would have expected, Sarah, but it's also not a word I would have expected you to cut somebody off for.
She said the F word.
She did. Okay, I didn't hear the F word.
Yes.
I heard something else.
I'm almost positive that she said the F word. So I obviously hit the hold button and hit the dump button.
My hearing's not perfect, so it's very possible she did.
She said we let other people get in and then they F stuff up.
I heard that with like an S, which didn't make a whole lot of sense, but.
Well, what I heard was that they F stuff up, and like she can't say that. You were
probably correct. I'm probably heard it wrong.
I can't take the risk anyway. Sarah, I'm sorry you didn't get to the topic that you wanted to get into. She wanted to talk about the congressional race in New Mexico, and obviously that's very important to her. It's not a conversation that like anyone else cares about, but it's wrong to say I don't believe in voting, because that's a nonsensical statement in the English language. I believe that voting is a thing that happens. It occurs. And in that sense, I believe in voting. Yes, voting is a thing that happens. I believe it in the same way that I believe in the sun, right? I don't believe that voting is ever going to achieve the effects that Sarah seems to want it to achieve. And I know that voting will never achieve the effects that I want to see. Voting
that's something I would 100% agree on. Yeah, right there.
Voting is a tool to achieve a goal, in theory, right? And the problem with voting is that it's one that everyone has to endure the consequences of. Now, it's a hammer, and therefore everything looks like a nail. Oh, these politicians are murdering people? Just vote them out of office. Just vote to solve the problem. Just vote. It's just a nail. Hit it with a hammer. But what if you want freedom? What if I don't want to participate in this system where literal murderers and conspirators of murderers, people who have killed millions of people, rule over me and can tell me what I can and can't do, and can arrest me and throw me in a cage where sewage leaks into the hallways? What if I don't want to participate in that system? And keep in mind, I know what you're going to say, just go somewhere else. But every acre of land on the globe, on the entire planet, is claimed by one particular government or another. You're giving me the option here. Well, if you don't like how the slave master is treating you on your plantation, not that I'm a slave, but you're saying if you don't like the way that your slave master is treating you, go to a different plantation, because there's no place that I could go in this analogy that is not a plantation. I would always have a slave master, and choosing one particular government to rule over me or another particular government to rule over me doesn't solve the problem of me not wanting a government to rule over me.
It also doesn't help that the U.S. government, which currently rules over you, will not let you go.
Also true.
Without, being bribed with substantial amounts of money.
Yes. Then even if you pay them that substantial amounts of money, as Roger Ver did, they will still arrest you after the fact and decide, no, we want some more money from you. So renouncing your citizenship and paying that tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm sure, when the attorney fees and all of that stuff is accounted for, that's beyond the reach of the average person, certainly.
Yeah, it's overrated and fanciful.
Plus, I was here first. I was here in the United States before the United States existed, right? By which I mean, if we're making those claims that, we're going back to whoever was here first, like my family was in
ancestral.
Yes, was in North America a full century, more than a century, more like 160 years before the American government came into existence. Why should I leave? They're the ones who suck. And I don't remember what the movie that's from, but it's completely appropriate here. I was here first. They came and they took over and they said, now bow to us and submit to our will, submit to our rule, and give us your money, or we'll kill you.
Yeah. See, my biggest issue isn't so much government exists as that there's only a slight variation on governments, right? So I can't pick something that's better enough that it's even worth moving over, right?
Right.
I mean, okay, so I move from one state to another, but the border laws are the same, right? They're still restricting whether or not, and of course this is they're also part of the United States, so they would have the same laws in that regard. But the point that I'm making is that the laws are only slightly different from one state to another.
And this is true from one country to another as well.
Yeah, right.
If I'm unhappy with the American government, I'm not unhappy with American society. And this is a very critical distinction for people to be aware of. I like American society. I like society in general. I like having the internet and a computer and electricity and a cell phone and roads and places where I can buy food. Like when I leave the show here tonight, I'm going to stop and buy a meal and go home and eat it, right? I like these perks. But none of these perks, roads included, are a product of the American government. None of them are required. None of them require a government to exist in order for us to have them. And I don't want to get into the argument of roads here because that's been done ad nauseum, right? People have literally written books about how we can have roads without government. And if you think, well, who's going to build the roads? And that's your stumbling block to libertarianism.
Roads were not built by government. They were built by private individuals and companies that got together and they were told.
But it doesn't matter, right? We're never going to convince those people. They're not putting that out there because they want the facts and the evidence and the explanation. They're presenting what they think is an insurmountable hurdle, and they refuse to acknowledge the validity of any other way of achieving roads.
Yeah, and it kind of misses the point too. It's you don't have to get rid of all government, right? Just let's minimize it, dramatically to the degree that it's
that would be an improvement.
Right. Like
that's not my goal, but it would be an improvement.
Sure. I mean, if we can drown it in a bathtub or something, that might be better. But, even just minimizing the laws to the degree, that it's, like we're not arresting people for stupid stuff and wasting taxpayer money in order to steal other people's money. It's like, you don't get to steal my money to throw somebody in jail for, I don't know, stealing a loaf of bread. That doesn't add up.
But also a valid question, like who would build the roads? We wouldn't need roads if there was no government, because you could buy a helicopter from Amazon for $300, right? The government, the FAA, they're the things getting in the way. They're the reason that you don't have a hoverboard and a flying car. They are 100% the reason. They are stifling innovation. They've been stifling innovation for centuries now, and they are keeping us behind where we should be. If there was no government, our technology would be leaps and bounds more advanced than it is.
I don't know. So I can't speak to, hovercrafts or helicopters and whether or not we'd all be in the Jetsons if it wasn't for government. I can't speak to that. But I think we probably
would be.
I can definitely speak to government hindering the organizations like the FCC hindering development and hindering progress. And a great example of this is in the wireless. So this is an area that I work in. It's wireless, like, your wireless routers and things like that. And the FCC came out with a rule, like this is just arbitrary. It's not something that the government passed by legislature. It's just literally this arbitrary thing where they decided that all routers have to be locked down. In fact, anything with a wireless device in theory has to be locked down based on their rule. But it's basically only practiced in the wireless routing world. Anyway, but what this does is it means that everything is proprietary and you can't tinker with your router, and people who are software developers can't improve the software. And so we're stuck. We have better
support. What about WRT and things like that?
Yeah, so it's way worse than it used to be.
But are they violations of this FCC ruling?
So what is required is effectively for you to be able to prevent changes and abuse of the spectrum that wasn't really being abused before anyway.
And this is because the FCC, I think it's the FCC, has regulated specific parts of the electromagnetic spectrum that is usable for Wi-Fi communication purposes. That way there's no overlap between terrestrial radio and television and Wi-Fi.
I have no objection to the protocols and the standards. The problem is that when the FCC says you can't manufacture a device that can be used outside of the rules, okay? Well, then all of a sudden you have a situation where you can't tinker with that device because of the way modern technology is developed. You don't develop everything in hardware anymore. It's developed mostly in software. So if you put something out on the market, you're forced to lock it down in order to comply with the rules. Now they're going to respond saying, well, we didn't require you to use the software method. Well, yeah, but there's only a couple of making the chips that you use is billions and billions of dollars. There's only so many chips and they're all software based. So the only way a router manufacturer can produce anything is either using an older chip or and even then in theory you still could potentially break the rules, but the rules are it's mostly applicable to 5 gigahertz spectrum. But anyway, but yeah, you could still violate the rules, I guess, if you use an older chip, although they're not manufacturing those chips anymore. But if they were, you could violate the rules in theory. Or I guess, you can still violate the rule. Here's the problem. You can violate the rules in a number of different ways. Modifying the software is just one way. In practice, the way the rules were being violated by end users was by doing things like putting on longer antennas onto their routers. That was what was causing interference so what it is it's around airports, around major airports. They use something on the 5 gigahertz frequency. And if you mess around with it enough, it will cause not interference, but it'll cause their radar screens to show things that are not there, but it's not going to show you planes. It's just going to show you
just ghosts, little blips and stuff.
Yeah. And an operator can actually tell the difference between this.
Right. But it's not ideal.
Right.
Obviously.
It's not ideal. But the point is that they passed a rule to force router manufacturers to lock down routers, which hinders progress that doesn't actually solve the problem, because the problem is people very close to airports putting on antennas, physically putting on antennas that then cause the interference.
Right. And that's what government does. It stifles innovation, and even the most well-meaning of regulations, it's just a stopgap until someone else comes up with a way around that regulation. And we see this in regard to cryptocurrency right now, where the SEC is doing everything that it can to destroy cryptocurrency, to stifle this innovation, this unique technology.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Kate Fisher. US Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump are virtually neck and neck across the 7 battleground states, with just 2 weeks left of campaigning before the 2024 presidential election, according to a new poll. A Washington Post Shah School poll of more than 5,000 registered voters taken during the first half of October found both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump with 47% support among those who said they will definitely or probably cast a ballot. Among likely voters, the vice president leads in Georgia, Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, while Trump enjoys advantages in Arizona and North Carolina. They're tied with 48% support in Nevada. The survey has a margin of error of 1.7 percentage points. Sean Diddy Combs is facing 7 new lawsuits, including allegations that he raped a minor. The music mogul already faces criminal sex trafficking and racketeering charges in the US. He's denied the allegations, with his lawyers saying in court the truth will prevail. Sally Patterson reports from New York.
Sean Combs is accused of rape and sexual assault in New York, Los Angeles and Las Vegas. The plaintiffs are both men and women. One says she was 13 when she was allegedly raped at a music awards after party. Several of the allegations involve drugs and alcohol. In a statement, Combs' lawyers say he's never sexually assaulted anyone, adult or minor, man or woman. He's currently being held in a Brooklyn jail over separate criminal charges. Prosecutors accuse the rapper of creating a criminal enterprise. Combs has denied any criminal wrongdoing.
Death row inmate Robert Roberson will not testify in a hearing on Monday after a bipartisan group of Texas lawmakers took unprecedented measures to subpoena him to save him from execution last week. Many believe Roberson is innocent and that his conviction of shaking his 2-year-old daughter Nikki to death hinges on, quote, junk science. Tony Waterman reports from Texas.
Roberson was meant to testify via video, but officials said his autism and years of solitary confinement made him ill-suited for video conferencing. Among those who did testify was TV personality Dr. Phil McGraw, who said he was 100% convinced that Roberson was facing a miscarriage of justice, saying his conviction hinges on outdated science. There is evidence Nikki may have died from undiagnosed pneumonia. The unprecedented subpoena has now kicked off a legal battle that will push Roberson's execution back at least 3 months.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. There's still time. If you want to join us, you can get on the airwaves and talk about whatever you like. Again, the number 603-283-6160. And did you know we have a Patreon? It's not even relatively new anymore. I should stop saying that. You can find it at patreon.freetalklive.com or amps.freetalklive.com. That's what I would recommend. amps.freetalklive.com. It stands for advertise, market, promote, and support. If you like Free Talk Live, if you like what we're doing, if you like the video feeds and the audio archives and the new Free Talk cast and other stuff that we've got going on, for example, like we mentioned it before, on January the 5th, we're airing the last weeknight episode of the show. We'll continue on doing the weekend show, obviously, but this frees us up to engage in other exciting new projects that we will be passionate about and engaged in and are really looking forward to getting the ball rolling. If you like those things, and if more importantly, if you like Free Talk Live, let us know that. Sign up for the AMPS program, amps.freetalklive.com. That's what Nick here has done, and it only takes $5 per month. That gets you in. Really cheap membership. In fact, I think there's even a free tier that you can sign up for, but that just like gets you subscription, like email notifications and stuff of our posts. I don't think it actually gets you any of the perks, and the perks would be that AMP-only version of the podcast, which coming soon will actually have a benefit to it versus the normal audio archive. Now, historically, the AMP podcast that you can find at amps.freetalklive.com or on our Patreon did not have any of the ads with it. And we used to plug in ads into the podcast, but we stopped selling the audio archive. We stopped selling those ads like 2 or 3 years ago. So there hasn't been much of a difference. But the Edge sponsorship that we have does include a podcast ad that has been recorded, and I'm just waiting on Mark Edge to get to me. And as soon as we do that, that will get plugged into the main audio archive. If you don't want to listen to that little 30-second audio archive ad, then join the AMPS program, amps.freetalklive.com. That shows your support, as Nick here has done. And you can donate more if you want to the AMPS program. I think there are tiers going all the way up to $50, and you can probably donate more than that. I don't know why you would want to. $5, though, is all it takes. amps.freetalklive. I am not a good salesperson, and I've never pretended to be.
Yeah, I mean, Aria, if you don't want the $1 million, contribution, I'll be more than happy to take it. Anybody feel free to contact me if you prefer.
I'm a bit weary of things, and I know that there are always strings attached, and that if we had $1 million amplifier, they would be expecting stuff, and they may start out with relatively innocuous demands, but it would very quickly become, hey, I'm coming out to Keene, and you guys need to come and hang out with me and have dinner or whatever. I'm withdrawing my subscription or whatever.
I feel like that's something I would do
if
either
it didn't
way,
get worse.
whether or not they were donating. So that wouldn't bother me too much. But
well, that's what we do though. Like when people come to Keene, which hasn't happened much since Ian has gone to prison, to be fair, but like it still happens.
Yeah, we've had a number of people actually.
No doubt. It's like we're all happy to sit down with people and like hang out with them and stuff and meet them and have a good time. So it does happen, no doubt. I wasn't saying it never happened, but like Ian was the main draw, and that's.
I mean, you haven't been to Social Sundays though, so you don't see the people coming by it, which is usually when they come by. So.
That's true. I don't go to Social Sundays, but to suggest that Ian isn't the main draw is flagrantly incorrect. Ian is and always has been the main appeal of Keene, New Hampshire.
I think most of the people that have come by have not even heard of Free Talk Live, to be honest. But in recent years, but that doesn't mean that nobody ever comes by because of Ian. I would agree with you on that one.
Regardless, it's not a point worth getting into. We have David on the line from New Mexico. David, you are on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind tonight?
Yeah, wireless tech stuff. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wireless tech or wireless text?
Tech.
Okay.
T-E-C-H.
Technology. Yeah.
Yeah. And so a number of different issues. Starting with depending on what we get to. But first of all, I got a couple of problems to solve, and some of it's interesting technology and stuff. But first of all, I know I use Verizon as a carrier, and I know Verizon has had some issues various places in the nation recently. I don't know if that's what I'm experiencing, but I'm at the point now with this piece of hardware and Verizon that, for instance, even like the beginning of your program, I'm streaming it fine now, but at the beginning of the program, I couldn't even stream uninterrupted your program on a simple radio app or using your website or whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's Verizon outages or problems, or if it's Verizon throttling me because I do use a lot of gigs because it's my only internet, or if it is that I'm in the device, I'm short on RAM, or if I'm short on ROM, or if I'm got an old processor, or if I have, for instance, I haven't closed down enough Google tabs.
The bottleneck in most cases like this is going to be the internet connection. And so it's probably going to be something related to Verizon. I believe they are the carrier that was most impacted by the hurricanes recently. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think they did lose. But that shouldn't affect you down there in New Mexico.
Yeah, it might be your data. I hear you're saying you're using a lot. So we're not doing tech support, just to be clear. So please don't call us about tech support. But yeah, it very well could be the data. You used up your data, and usually when you use up your data, it becomes ungodly slow in terms of
they start throttling.
Yeah, you get throttled down to nothing to a point where websites won't even load.
A lot of carriers do offer unlimited data, but they offer
unlimited in quotes.
But they offer, I know. I had Sprint close down my account once for using too much of the unlimited data. But they also offer hotspots. So if you're tethering something to your phone to use its data, that gets counted differently. And you get significantly less of that.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
Right. Okay. So I got the things that I don't consider this tech support because I have deeper questions. One deeper question, for instance, I don't think tech support could even answer this, but I've wondered for years and years and years, if you have lots of, for instance, Google Chrome browser windows, they've been opened, you haven't closed them. At some point, if you haven't closed those, whether you got 50 or 100 or several hundred open, at some point, does that affect the functioning of your handheld device?
I wouldn't think so, because those tabs shouldn't be loading anything when you're not using them effectively.
That's my guess.
It used to be at one time that would be the case, but not now.
That's what I thought. So I didn't think that should be an issue.
I have to say though, this is getting a lot like a tech support. We're not a tech support show.
Okay, let's talk about space then. Let's talk about satellites.
Okay.
So satellite wireless. This is cutting edge. Elon Musk versus AST. T-Mobile versus Verizon versus everybody else. By the way, China is doing an Elon Musk thing as well, starting soon. Do you Chris, happen to know when we, the people, will benefit from full, if, for instance, if you travel into the mountains of New Hampshire where you typically lose cell service, but now Elon Musk has come along, or AST, his competitor, has come along, that now you won't lose service. Do you know when that's going to be available? Because it's going to be soon.
They've already got Tesla, not Tesla. Starlink already exists, so I'm not sure. I mean, I know Starlink is going to go out, but that's going to be the case for any satellite. In regards to, I forget exactly what affects it, but clouds and things like that, or rain or snow or
that's not what I'm asking you. I think I probably know more about it than you do, but what I'm asking is regular cell service, not just emergency cellular access to emergency services through text or voice, which is already here actually.
I don't know the answer to this question as far as when you're going to be able to do satellite texting from your phone.
So, well, you can do it now. I was to the next level already. When we're going to get full service via satellite on our existing or updated versions of our current handheld devices.
Well, you won't, because these things require a satellite to be in a fixed location pointing at specific parts of the sky. So, I mean, you can connect yes, they do. You can connect, because we have Starlink here at the studio.
Yeah.
So, I've got a fair idea of how it works. but you have to connect to the Starlink modem, and then that will send the stuff from your phone to the satellite, which gets it to the low Earth orbit satellites.
Okay, well, let me tell you something you apparently don't know, that soon T-Mobile is going to have satellite service via Starlink available to every T-Mobile cell phone. Do you know that?
You're talking about the texting, though, right?
He's asking when we're going to have a portable Starlink that we can take with us wherever and have Starlink access from the middle of the woods or whatever. And like that's never going to happen.
Well, I wouldn't say never.
No, it is going to happen. Watch. I'll bet you $100, Arya.
I mean, so right now, I know Ari is 100% right that you have to have it pointed you have to have it in a very specific spot, and it's pointed at like a satellite, and if you move it, then
no, I'm talking about something different. I'm talking about something different. I'm not talking about Starlink, because I've read their website.
In order to communicate with those low Earth orbit satellites, though, you have to be able to communicate with them. You have to have a satellite sender and receiver on your end that communicates with those orbiting satellites.
Right,
your cell phone is categorically not capable. Your cell phone, your mobile phone is categorically not capable of doing that.
Oh, you hear that, Richie Rich? Ari is calling you a liar that your Apple 15 does not have what you said it had when you said it last night, Richie. You're a liar.
So
I'm not calling Richie a liar because I didn't listen to last night's show, and I don't call people liars anyway. However,
you liar.
I've got too many people trying to talk over me right now, and I really need to point out that what Richie Rich probably was talking about was the fact that his cell phone communicates with various towers around the area, and those communicate with satellites, certainly. But the cell phone does not communicate. Okay.
So
you know everything, David.
I think I have a little bit of an understanding of what everybody's talking about, and my understanding is that there is going to be a feature added to newer phones that, with at least certain providers, that allows you to do some sort of emergency communication via a satellite, like the old satellite phones on your normal phone. It's not regular internet connectivity. So I don't know to what degree, you might even be. I'm not even 100% sure if it's text messaging you can do, but some sort of emergency communications are going to be possible with phones at some point.
Well, probably for 911 services, perhaps.
Something along those lines. It's not like...
But that more or less exists already, where like even if
they might already have that out,
where like even if you have a completely inactive phone, you can use it to dial 911.
That's not quite the same thing because that's using the regular towers, not satellite, but this would be actual communication with low orbit satellite, I believe is what they're talking about. And that, as I understand, is still just emergency services.
Right. And I'm going to bet that within several years, meaning 2, 3, 4 tops, there will be, through Elon Musk and his competitor, full usage of your handheld device direct to the satellite without having to use their Starlink modem.
So in order for that to happen, I think that there has to be a redesign of like the antennas, as I understand it, in the phones in order to make that possible. And there may be something in like the research phase to make that happen. I don't know. I know I've read about something along those lines, but I don't know if it's something that like it was a little bit ago now. And I'm not sure if it's something that's like happening today or if it's still a decade away or something like that.
I'm not sure it would be cost effective. I can't imagine what benefit there would be versus just having your cell phone communicate with one of the towers that already exist.
I don't think it would ever be a way to communicate like normally.
What I'm talking about,
what you're talking about, David, is a very, 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 very small subset of the population that would be even interested in this. It goes back to like satellite internet, like HughesNet and Deep Blue and stuff like
super expensive.
Yeah, they existed and they were super expensive and they were slow and they were clunky and they were terrible.
The difference between this and what he's talking about is, in theory, I believe this could do cheaper and better.
Right, but it's serving the same kind of market, is my point. It's serving the exact same clientele, and there's just not a lot of those people out there.
You're very, very, very true. And and traditionally, one of the reasons that we don't all have satellite phones is because the cost and small market, and basically there's a really long delay in latency. So if you click a link, for example, and normally takes a fraction of a second to get a response, well, when it has to go up to a orbit on a traditional satellite, it has to go really, really far, and it takes a really, really long time. So maybe it's 30 seconds before you get a response from that website now.
Well, what is the lag? What is the lag from? Because it doesn't take 30 seconds for the speed of light to go to a satellite and back. It takes
they're using radio waves.
Yeah, it's radio, not light waves.
Radio waves are speed of light. Radio waves are speed of light.
I don't know enough about it, to be honest, but I know that the low orbit satellites that Starlink is using for its service, those are not. There's not as much of a delay. In terms
Regardless,
of
we're not a tech support show. If you're curious why there is latency, David, if you're curious why there is latency in satellite internet connections, Google it.
Yeah,
look it up. Read a Wikipedia article about it. But it's not within my capabilities to explain to you why that is the case, and I'm not going to attempt to.
Yeah, we're getting too much into the problem is we're getting too much into the weeds of this. That it's going to be not of interest to general radio listeners.
I don't think any of this has been of interest.
I don't think so either. To be honest, this is more of a power user kind of topic for maybe another show or
I mean, the possibility of the future and having full-blown internet connections everywhere you go, to me as an end user, it makes no difference whether I'm connected to a cell tower or directly to a low Earth orbit satellite. I understand that if I was connected directly to the satellites, it would be more usable if I was in the White Mountains or whatever, but that's not... There's a reason that not very many things are marketed to tiny fractions of the population. They're going to work on things that have mass appeal, that appeal to large numbers of people, because that's going to be the ones who pay you the more money. No one's marketing to the 0.001% of the population who needs fast internet. And this is why there were still places in the South that were using dial-up internet in 2015.
My company is the last company that sells dial-up modems in America, basically. So
really?
I can attest to this. Yes, there are still people buying dial-up modems.
And there's still people using them. And
which I'm still trying to figure out how, because they've taken out the copper lines in a lot of places. So you
probably
can't...
not in the South.
Yeah, probably not. Because a lot of places they've taken out the lines. So your copper traditional phone lines, you can't get service. So unless you already have service, and
I ran into this issue when I was in federal prison because you're required to have a landline in order to be released into home confinement, and they make it very, very clear that it has to be an actual landline, not a voice over IP line.
But they're not required to provide landline service anymore.
Right. And the vast majority of people in the prison system and in the U.S. probation system, they don't know the difference.
Right.
If you sign up for a Spectrum voice over IP line or whatever, that's going to work just fine for them. They don't care. But it's not going to meet the needs that they want it to meet. And part of the reason for this is that a landline never, ever goes down. It's not dependent upon electricity. And this was the key thing. If they call you, they don't want to hear that, the power went out because of a storm, right? They want you to answer the phone to be able to prove that you are there at that location, at that landline.
That's the reason for the landline?
That's what I've been told. Well, they have a device. This is all inmates.com, by the way. Well, I haven't used that phrase in a while. And that's just basically inmates spreading rumors among other inmates and saying what we've learned about the system. It's not always reliable.
Okay.
But what I read on inmates.com was that they wanted you to have a landline. And they said the reason was because they wanted to call you and make sure that was there. But the reality was that your tracking device uses the landline to communicate. And if that goes down, then it flags you as having escaped.
So that's really entertaining, because the way the modern technology works with the tracking is, there's two different kinds though. So
it's also the federal government, which is way behind the times.
Yeah.
There are also rumors that they have one of the ankle monitors that can detect your blood alcohol levels, and that they will go off if you've had even a shot of vodka.
Oh, yeah, because of the sweat. Yeah, I've seen this. I heard of this too.
I don't know if that's true. Again, I read that on inmates.com.
I don't know
if
it's
the rumor going around then.
It's out or available yet, but there is something like that was in development that I read about. Yeah.
It's probably not possessed by the U.S. federal probation system, I would guess, but maybe in some cases it is.
I don't know why.
I'm not prohibited from drinking though, so it ultimately is irrelevant to me.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an
I also don't drink
question.
anymore anyway. But yeah, they do require you to have a landline, and So I had my best friend looking into this, one of my best friends, I should say, because I would still consider Ian to be one of my best friends. Anyway, she was looking into this landline thing for me while I was in prison because I was told that I could not get home confinement if I didn't have an actual landline. Or if I didn't have a landline, was what the staff told me. And I know enough about technology to know that voice over IP is not a landline.
Right.
So I had her looking for an actual landline. And there are 2 companies, I think it was, that offered it in the Keene area. And only one of them offered it at this particular location. And it took them, I think, 3 weeks to get someone out there and install it. And it was going to take them 3 weeks to get someone to come out there and do it. And that's because like the infrastructure for this no longer really exists. Like it's apparently still there, but like the house is totally disconnected from it. And they would, I don't know what all of the specifics were.
I'm trying to remember what it was like to disconnect the phone line back in the day and reconnect the phone line, because did it require somebody to come to the house and physically connect? It did. Yeah, it did. So the way it works is usually they would just disconnect it at the box that's on the side of the house.
Right.
And it's like literally just a matter of reconnecting it.
Right.
And then like,
and if you know how to do that yourself, which by the way is super easy.
Yeah.
It's only 2 cables because the only ones used are the blue and white pair.
Yep. Yeah. So what? So wait, why would it take them 2 or 3 weeks to come out?
I don't know. I was communicating with her through the prison email system, which has basically a 4-hour delay. And she was super busy working and living her life and juggling that and trying to help, her best friend get out of federal prison.
Yeah.
So she was super busy and our ability to communicate. And then she got banned from visiting me twice. Yeah. So like it was all very haphazard and difficult for me to try to figure out.
So so did you finally get
No, I never got the landline.
Never got the landline.
But I never got home confinement either because instead of doing that, they sent me to the halfway house for 2 weeks for unknown reasons. And like if they had given me the option, honestly, if they had said you can stay here in prison for 2 more weeks or you can go to the halfway house, I would have chosen to just stay in prison for 2 more weeks. I tried this. I honestly tried this. And the staff told me, if you do this, you're going to lose all of your FSA credits because in order to qualify for your FSA credits, your First Step Act credits, the things that cause mine and Ian's release date to go lower by 10 or 15 days every single month, you are engaging in what they call positive programming. That, I'm taking their classes and I'm doing all the things to make me a model good citizen. And by not doing the halfway house, I'm rejecting the programming. And that means I'm not eligible for FSA credits. Now, they were lying to me, and I knew they were lying to me. They can't take away those credits by me not doing the classes or me not taking the halfway class. They can refuse to award me additional credits, but they couldn't take away the ones that I had already earned. But when you're 3 weeks away from your release date and they're saying this is going to extend your sentence by 5 months,
Yeah.
you don't want to fight that battle with them. I don't want to fight it with them. Like I knew I would win, but what if I didn't? And what if the battle itself made me have to stay in prison an extra month?
The problem is you could have been 100% right and still lose. It's not that you would necessarily you could lose and be 100% right because the system is so messed up. Like that's the best way to describe it. It's
because I was 100% right about that. In order to take away FSA credits, it requires a hearing, and you have to be a very bad prisoner, getting into all sorts of trouble. Not wanting to go to a halfway house would not have been enough. And to lose all of your FSA credits because you don't take the classes or you don't engage in the programming, it would be unheard of. But 3 weeks out from your release date, when they're telling you that, that's not a battle you want to fight. They got you. They've got you bent over a barrel, and they know it. And they're going to exploit you and lie to you until you comply and obey and do whatever it is they tell you to do. Thanks for listening. freetalklive.com.
If you're looking for work, you know what I mean by elevator speech. It's the short version, saying just enough to make the listener want to listen more. Even if you're not a job seeker, effective communication skills have never been more important, with money and attention so scarce now. So to cut through the clutter, choose every single word as though it was the last word the person you're speaking to will hear. Otherwise, it might be. Instead of saying